Full for them, almost, after 3 hours.
Yeah, no, yeah, good. Good. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody, and I'd like to open the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, September 16th, 2013. And I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if afterwards you would please remain standing.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Governor Deval Patrick has ordered the United States flag and the Commonwealth flag to be lowered to half-staff for all state buildings from sunrise until sunset on Wednesday, September 11th, 2013, Patriot Day and National Day of Service and Remembrance in honor of the individuals who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. And President Obama has directed that flags be lowered to half-staff until sunset on Friday in honor of the victims of the Navy Yard shooting. And if we could all just observe a moment of silence for these two occasions. Okay, thank you very much. All right. I will go through tonight's agenda before we get started. First, we're going to go through read mail, and then we're going to have public input and member updates. We're going to discuss a gift and hopefully accept the gift of Aiden's Playground. Town board appointments, we had an appointment, but that will not be heard as the application has been withdrawn. At 7:30, we'll start to talk about inserting special town meeting articles for November 4th, 2013 special town meeting. We have two public hearings scheduled for tonight, one at 8, one at 8:30. One is for earth removal permit, and one is for a license for land at 39 Air Road. And any of those have to be called at those times, so if we're in other discussions, they'll have to be stopped, and we'll have to at least open those. So at 8:35, we are scheduled to continue special town meeting articles if necessary. At 9 o'clock, we'll hear from the town administrator and special town administrator for finance and budget. We have to talk about some staffing vacancy reviews and procurements. 9:10, we have other business, and at 9:15, we have executive session for collective bargaining strategy. With that, Keith, I'll turn it over to you for mail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the mail packet this week are a number of letters or emails that we've received since the board's last regular meeting on the subject of medical marijuana. We, I think, received about 5 from 4 or 5 individuals. Now, we are awaiting further word from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, which has indicated that by mid-September, which I think September 16th constitutes pretty close, by that time they are planning to release the names of those of the 181 initial applicants who are being invited for the second round of for licenses under the new medical marijuana statute. We don't have any further information on that. As soon as we do, we will post it to the website. We also have some indication from DPH that they would, in this next round, release the names of the cities and towns where the sites are proposed. Up till now, all they've done is indicate what county they're in. We happen to know that there's one, at least, that's applied for Littleton, because the gentleman came and told us. There's been no systematic review by anyone outside of DPH to see where the other applications are from, where the cultivation sites are, but that information, we are told, would be released soon. And as soon as it is, we can share it with folks here. Also in the packet is a copy of a notice from the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission scheduling a hearing date on October 30th in Boston on the appeal that's been filed by the pub on the Common in response to the board's action here, so that we'll be proceeding with the pre-hearing preparations in accordance with ABC's policies, and can report back more between now and October 30 to let you know how that this proceeding.
Keith, can I ask a question on that? I saw on the notice of the appeal hearing that within 20 days of receipt of this notice, there was to have been filed a joint pre-hearing memorandum. Do you know if that occurred? Because the 20 days have elapsed.
I have not seen one, so I'm not aware that one has been filed yet or not, but we'll follow that up.
Thank you.
And do you want to review the instances or what can come out of that as far as the appeal? Because I think we saw the email, but the public may be interested in, I know it's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but.
Well, the ABCC will frankly make its own decision on its own set of standards, and which may or may not be the same as what a local licensing authority does. That it is by statute a higher power, and I guess they go by their own set of standards.
And the summary from what I saw on the marijuana, letters on the medical marijuana, the ones I saw seemed to be all negative, that they were not
They're all
supportive of it.
negative. I haven't yet received a positive response to, in writing or by email to the proposal.
Okay.
And the last item in this packet is a copy of the letter of resignation from Council on Aging member Rosemary DeBacco, and we're sending her a letter of thanks for her service to the COA.
And then there was just one letter handed to us today, an update on the item that we're going to discuss next on the Aiden's Playground, so we can get to that at that time. Okay, public input. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak? Mr. Del Priore, yes.
Just a quick question on this whole medical marijuana thing. Is the state gonna set it up where they just completely override local zoning? Or is the town gonna, or our town's gonna be able to have any kind of say at all in this? Or hasn't that been decided?
Keith?
Yeah, I think the jury's out on that from what we can see, but and as had been mentioned at the, you said it before, Jerry, the joint meeting of the planning board and the selectmen, that the Attorney General has upheld a series of bylaws passed by other towns, which have even sought to amend or regulate what constitutes agriculture in a zoning bylaw. And some towns have outlawed cultivation of medical marijuana use in their zoning bylaws. The Attorney General, in approving those other bylaws in other towns, added the caveat that that there's an overriding state law which in essence says that a town or city cannot regulate what the definitions of commercial agriculture are, and if it meets any of those three tests, which is in one case if it's over 5 acres in size or over 2 acres, then you make $1,000 a year out of the property. And the third category was that it's zoned for agriculture. That if you meet any of those, then you can't, then a local zoning could not outlaw commercial agriculture. It will be, it's probably going to be a judge somewhere down the line that will say whether cultivation of medical marijuana does or doesn't constitute commercial agriculture, and then we'll know whether you can regulate it or not. But we don't know yet.
Okay. Great. Anything else from the public? Yes, Mr. Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief information. I did write Congressman Sharrow and Senator Eldridge, and I asked them how they figured that Massachusetts grown marijuana at $500 an ounce would be more beneficial to the ill, people with limited income, than getting marijuana from Colombia, where $2 an ounce, you can get it by the ton. So the real question is, why is Massachusetts going in this business? I mean, I just have to question this. I'll be anxious to see what I get for an answer, because, talking about lights and heat and security and fences, I mean, it's going to be a massive thing. And we could even buy it from California, Oklahoma, Mexico, anywhere. And it's cheap. I know what it costs in California. It's $300 an ounce.
You seem very familiar with this, Mr. Crystal.
I tell you, it can really brighten your day. But I Anyway, I will forward you guys the answer. It's been
Yeah, I
only a
appreciate
week, and we'll see what they're thinking.
All right.
All we have to do is go up to Groton.
I have no idea.
You're more familiar with it than I am.
Yes, Mr. Turner.
Moving from marijuana back to booze, so, I didn't follow so much the whole thing with the pub, but I'm puzzled that, as I understood, the sanction that this board put on the pub was completely a suspended sanction.
Yes.
Yes.
And they believe that's unfair to the degree that they need to appeal it. That's just, maybe it's not a question, it's just an observation. That seems mind-boggling. It seems like they got away with murder. But
There
so I
seems to be
guess I
a
have
lot
no
of
question.
mind, there's a lot of mind-boggling stuff going on now.
Yeah, okay,
you know?
okay. All right, I have no question. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nice to have a little crowd tonight.
I'm just curious, where's that Indian festival Sunday down at the school?
The Indian Festival?
Yeah, there was a bunch of folks apparently from India doing some kind of a native
Oh,
dance and,
This is the
From
Board
the
of Selectmen.
subcontinent, India?
yeah. They were pounding away
That
on
would be a
some
school
drums, and you
committee
could hear them
question?
well up
Yeah.
on,
Be a school committee
Yeah.
question, Jerry?
I was just curious what it was.
yeah, not participating, and I wasn't familiar with it, yeah. Well, you're right by there, you must have walked through there going to church or something? Is that-
Well, no, I heard this god-awful sound, I thought the natives were on the warpath. And
Okay. All right,
Moving right along.
yeah, well, thank you. Anything else? This is great, it's nice to have some light, yeah.
You know, we were visited by the bear last week, so it's
Okay.
getting around.
Yeah, good,
Okay.
all right. All right, let's move to the board. Alex?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Joe?
I just one thing, on Friday night, I had the honor to go to Northfield and in the panel discussion about town government study that we did 10 years ago, and it was so interesting to hear all the people with a lot of the same things that we talked about back then and whatnot. And just by chance, there was a panel of 3 people, a person from, myself, a person from Orange, and Mike Ward, who is one of the directors of the Collins Center for Government at UMass Boston. And I thought it was kind of funny reading our meal packet,
Yeah.
there's his name again in here, and I took his business card to bring back, so we can use him in the future. He's already has a proposal for something
Okay.
we're doing, so.
Good. Okay, Jenna?
Yeah, I wanted to mention the Littleton Road Race is happening this coming Sunday. They have 400 registrants as of now, which is a little bit more than they did at this time last year, but it's still open. Registration this week, even on race day. And if you're not inclined to run 5K or 1 mile, please come out and cheer on your fellow residents who will be hobbling along on the, not everyone, you won't hobble, but
I don't know.
I will hobble. So please come out and support a great cause, and it's a great day for the community.
Are you running?
I am running
1 or 3?
the 5K,
Okay.
slowly.
See you at the start line.
Yes.
I got a
Jim?
call from Mr. Peter Tanny. He used to serve along, was a school teacher, retired, and a member of our Conservation Commission for a long time. And he wanted to express his gratitude to the fire department. His wife has been ill, and he's had to make multiple calls for assistance. And he wanted to make sure that the board knew how professional, how caring, and how understanding the fire department and those who responded to his home to take care of his wife. And I told him I would pass it on to the board and make sure that next time I see Chief, I will mention it to him also. Nice job.
Yeah, it's nice to hear. Okay. With that, we can move on to Aiden's Playground.
Hold on, I need to recuse myself from this because I am the president of the Littleton Children's Fund, which is the organization that maintains the playground. So I will be
Okay.
stepping out now.
Okay. I think the board is pretty familiar with this, but I will leave it up to the proponents, the gifters, to present it. So I'll turn it over to Christy Bates and Sarah Donovan from the Littleton Children's Fund. So go ahead, have the floor.
Hi, I'm Christy Bates and Sarah Donovan, and we're on the board of the Littleton Children's Fund. And we have raised about $50,000 in order to rebuild the small children's section of Castle in the Trees at 300 King Street. and rename it Aiden's Playground, and that is in memory of my nephew, Aiden Malio, who drowned in Littleton in July of 2012. And we're at a point now where, as I mentioned, we've raised the funds. We've gone through a lot of permitting and figuring out what needs to be done to build a playground. And we hope, if all goes well, to break ground the first week in November. We're still working with Littleton Earthworks, who's going to be preparing the area, and our playground vendors coming in. We're meeting on Thursday to just get final measurements and work out the actual details, timing. I don't know if you guys need to know that, but
Yeah.
and so we are hoping that it will be built in early November, and we would like to then gift it to the town. Littleton Children's Fund has maintained all of Castle in the Trees for 22 years and plans to continue to do that. And we're not building a new playground. We are replacing the existing structures with new structures and renaming it.
Okay. All right. What's your construction schedule, did you say, when you plan to be done?
Well, we are going to finalize that hopefully this Thursday, or hopefully by the end of this week. Our anticipated schedule is to the last week in October to go and remove the existing structures. And again, it's only in the small children's
Right,
area. Remove the existing structures, build up part of the fence, dig out and level part of the area to put in new surfacing and prepare that, and then the following week bring in the new structures and add the surfacing and everything else,
Okay.
and rebuild the fences.
Okay. And I assume there's going to be some opening that you want to keep us informed of in the spring? You're going to have some talk about?
Well, we're again, yes, we'll keep you informed on that. We're still hoping that it's going to be this November.
Oh, good. Okay.
So we'll see. And as we mentioned kind of earlier, we do have, we are going to put up a sign there is a sign at Castle in the Trees now, and this will be sort of set inside near the Aiden's Playground section, a sign listing Aiden's Playground with sponsors. We've had corporations within Littleton and Westford and some other areas that have donated money, and individual donors, and their names will be on there similar to the plaque that's there now. And we haven't designed that, so we'll get you a design for that, if we get approval for that when the time comes.
Okay.
But looking for second week in November, a grand opening if we can.
All right. That'd be great. I know this has been a long time coming, and I know you've been doing a lot of work between Park and Rec and all your other permitting and conservation, things like that, so it's nice to see it all come together.
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Any thoughts from the public? I think it's nice, these happy, well, it's Memorial, but it's still a good project to see go right through.
Ready for a motion?
Sure.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, subsection 53A, and in accordance with the request of the Park and Recreation Commission to receive a gift of approximately $50,000 in renovations and playground equipment in memory of Aiden
Malia.
Malio, and to be called Aiden's Playground for a young children's section of the Castle in the Trees Playground on our town-owned property at 300 King Street, maintained by the Littleton Children's Fund. Second.
Motion been made and seconded to accept the gift of Aiden's Playground. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Great job.
Great,
very
thank you.
much.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck. Feel free to stick around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good night. All right, 7:20, we had one member appointment scheduled, but that was full. The application was full, so we can go to, I think we can jump right on to the special town meeting articles. So we have a draft warrant here for the special town meeting on November 4th. I think we can just take these one by one, and then if there's any discussion on any one of them, we can talk about that, and then we'll vote them all on at one point. If there's any discrepancy or any disagreement, we can vote for an article by itself, but I'd like to just go through all of them, discuss them, and then vote them all at once if possible. So, Keith, you want to start, or Bonnie, do you want to start one
Sure.
through them? I mean, a lot of these are standard, the bills of prior years is, that's a standard one.
Standard one, it does require a 9/10 vote.
Yeah.
At this point, we haven't identified any bills of prior years, but if any come in between, or we become aware of any that come in between now and town meeting, this would be an opportunity to bring it forward. Article 2 proposed is to fund the collective bargaining agreement that was, and the motion under this article would be to fund the agreement reached with the highway department, that we reached with police, fire, and dispatch in time for last November's special town meeting. It's the same deal that's been reached with the highway union, and we want to bring it forward for funding. Our proposed Article 3 is for FY 2014 budget adjustments. The article itself would not specify what those adjustments are, but the motion would. And maybe Bonnie can just sort of indicate what it looks like. I know actually we were both wishing that we'd made the suggestion Ted did at the last meeting, which is that the OPEB fund is, there was some additional money that Bonnie's analysis had indicated was available and needs to be appropriated, and that the suggestion was made that we increase the amount that's going into the OPEB fund, and Bonnie
Correct,
can-
there's about 378,000 that was mentioned before. So we will include that as part of this article, along with any other adjustments that might come along. I did hear unofficially that there might be a request for additional funding from the Historical Commission for a feasibility study regarding the Long Store reconstruction. They're going to kind of vet that out over the next few days and provide some update on that. Other than that, there might be a few items. I haven't really firmed anything up at this point. I'm not expecting any surprises. The OPEB will be the big one.
Okay. So the 2014, this is to realign the budget that we voted in May for the current fiscal year, and it's because some of the monies that weren't available at that time have been,
Correct.
some of the assumptions have been.
Primarily, it's the snow and ice money that we had anticipated, a deficit for, that we did not realize as large a deficit. So that freed up a little bit of that funding. It's one-time funding, so it should be used for, non-operational.
Okay, all right. Okay, so then we go on to Article 4, Keith?
That's, we have received 2 requests for capital projects, which the board could choose to bring forward now. One of them is for LCTV equipment upgrades, and especially since our local cable outfit taps into a dedicated source of revenues, which is only available for them, and there's about 400,000 on account now, that it would be an opportunity for us to, without any impact on the property tax, just dip into that fund, let them access additional monies now to be able to, upgrade the equipment in this room, do other things in other locations like room 307 or whatever, rather than wait till May, that the money's there, it doesn't affect anyone else, so it's an opportunity, and it's one of your goals to expand town boards televising their meetings, so this is an opportunity to do that.
So this room is on, because the sound in this room is horrible watching TV.
We just have to yell one.
Yeah.
But
So-
it's included in that?
Yes, and we hope, we'd want to try to get some higher tech equipment
Yeah.
in here, so.
And that's
Folks
transferred
at
in,
home can hear us.
that's a zero.
There's no impact on the property tax rate because it comes from the funds the PEG funds, which is public education and government. What's the P stand for?
I can't
But
remember.
it's the money that comes from cable subscribers that goes to the town exclusively for cable operations and expenses, so we'd like to do that. The other one, which is new, which is brand new in the last couple of weeks, is a request from the public safety departments to upgrade to a microwave radio system, I guess in part because the equipment's not always working right now, what we're using now, that there are dead spots in town, that we asked it was an urgent matter, can it wait till May, and we were told it's urgent, so.
Exactly. Right now, it's basically a problem with the copper wiring that runs from the police station to Cedar Hill and our other sites from Oak Hill and Newtown Road. Typically, over the last year, on several occasions, after it rains, within a day or two, we'll be going to a response, the police will be going to a response, and dispatch, there's no reply. Somebody's calling for backup. One of the instances, we were going to a medical requesting for the paramedics. There's no reply. They don't hear us, you know, we can't hear them, it just, the system goes dead. In addition to that, Verizon has told us that they're not maintaining the copper lines anymore, and that we would need to replace it with fiber. Light department is looking at doing that at some point next year, but that's kind of on their schedule. So the immediate fix for that would be to change the system to a microwave system, basically going from Oak Hill to Cedar Hill and Newtown and back to the police station. And since it's such a close proximity, the transmission would be, would be excellent. There wouldn't be any issues with distance on that. And to boot, also the other departments in town would eventually be able to benefit from that as well. And that would be an immediate fix to repair the problem for any of the radio transmissions.
So would the copper wires then be replaced so that project comes off for light and water?
We would get, on top of that, we rent from Verizon the copper lines, and we wouldn't be paying for rent anymore on those. We would own the microwave system and be able to maintain that. So basically, yeah, the copper portion would be cut out of it, microwave right now, and then next year we would have a fiber a backup link. So if there was ever something, major hurricane, something like that, or vice versa, if the power lines came down, we'd always have the microwave. So
What's the implementation schedule?
it would be right away. If it was approved, they would begin
November 5th?
in November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deputy Chief, anything to add? No? In agreement?
No, I mean, it's just, this has been an ongoing issue basically since the police department opened with the copper lines issue, and it just, Verizon at one point did place a fairly large investment and actually went and redid all the lines, and a year later, we're back to the same problem, and now they don't want to support copper lines anymore because that's not their bailiwick. And this also, again, I'm not sure the exact cost, but we rent, I think, 22 lines, and I believe it's like $80 or $100 a line per month. Okay. And we would eliminate all that with this also. So it does take that out of the loop, because the Spec Pond site would go to town-owned fiber. The Air Road site would actually be eliminated, transferred to the Oak Hill Tower, which would be microwave to Cedar Hill to the PD, and then the Newtown Road tower also would be, like Scott said, microwave from that tower to the PD. Okay. And then when we get the backup fiber from the light department, even if a major catastrophe was to happen and those poles were to get taken down, you still have backup on either which way. So that's why we're asking for this fix.
Sounds good. Any other questions?
I got a couple things. Okay, first, Chief, I got a call from Peter Tanny, and he wanted me to pass along what a great job your department has done responding to the medical calls for his wife, and the professionalism of your department, and the folks who responded, and they're caring and very compassionate folks. So, a job well done. Just pass that on to your troops for me. Bonnie, my question for you is, where is the 120 coming from?
I have 387,000 available
Okay.
at this town meeting. So whatever you spend in any of these articles would come off of that.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
So far it's 120. That's all we have. Okay.
Plus the next one.
Right.
Okay. What's that?
Depends on how big.
Well, the 100 would come from the
300
pigs.
party.
Oh, the peg, you're right, absolutely, okay,
Okay.
got it.
Okay. Sounds good. Article 5 is from the 300. Joe, would you like to take that? Or Keith?
Once again, the committee that's preparing for the tricentennial has been doing a fantastic job. And even this week, they'll be having a special meeting just talking about financing. But in the meantime, they're looking for some funds as operational funds, because it gets closer. There are certain committees that need money up front. Even the opening committee will need, they have bands they have to pay for, and the parade coming up. To secure these bands, you have to pay money ahead of time. So we're just looking for some operational funds that we know that will be there, so we can guarantee that if something comes up, we can go right after it, so.
Okay. What would be after that? Is there going to be anything in the budget for next year?
Hopefully, this will cover us, and all the fundraising will take care of the whole thing.
Okay. All right. Do you have a number to put in?
The amount we're looking for right now is $50,000.
Okay. Do we want to put that in now? Do we want to leave it as a placeholder? Do we want to, well, we have to discuss it here, but.
No, they want to put it in,
Yeah, if you
want
wanted
to
to,
be ready
if
for
you-
that.
if you don't think it's going to be any more than 50 that they need, then we could have the article read $50,000.
Or do you want to just bump it up a little and just add it as a placeholder? And, you know, if you go 100,000, you know it's not going to be 100,000, I don't think, but at least have some wiggle room once you get,
yeah, I'd leave
finalize the
I'd
committee.
leave it open right now, so when we meet on Wednesday morning, we'll have a better idea.
So
And that
can we
can
put
be
the
it.
dollar amount in the actual motion?
Yeah, the motion can have the dollar amount, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's the same thing that we're doing with the budget
Yeah.
adjustment article, that we can have the motions specify the dollars.
So what's the approval process for that? Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, it would come, the motions
And then
would
town
come
meeting,
here.
obviously.
Yes. In order to finalize the numbers contained in the motions, we would have you vote on each of those recommendations, and it would be your motion that was brought to town meeting for particular amounts.
Does anyone have any discussion? I mean, we'll be able to discuss it when the motions are presented, but.
Can't wait for the party. It's gonna
Yeah,
be a
I know,
blast.
I know.
They're doing so much work.
I know.
Parades and fireworks and ballroom dancing, and it's gonna be all sorts of fun.
Do you know, is it going to be open to, the celebration events open to all residents at no cost? Or will there be cost for some things and not for others? Have you talked about that?
The only one that we know that will be cost of will be the ball.
Mhm.
And through the sales of tickets, that should be covered completely on the ball.
Oh, good.
I
Yeah.
think almost everything else, if I'm not mistaken, will be open to the public and free.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You might be asked to buy a T-shirt or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those trinkets will be on sale soon.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where-
Oh,
that's
yes,
where
okay.
we make our money on the
Well, it's kind of like the
stuff.
Smithsonian, it's included in your taxes. That's what, it gets paid here, and that's included in your tax.
So-
Okay.
What's that? Okay. Article 6 is for Park and Rec and Board of Selectmen. Keith?
Yeah, this was one of the two recommendations from the auditor that we'd like to bring forward to this special town meeting. The first one is to establish Park and Rec as an enterprise fund, rather than a series of separate revolving funds. And this board had reviewed that recommendation before. We've met with the Finance Committee as well on these matters. And so we'd like to get the vote in place now so that when we're preparing the next budget for Park and Rec, we can know that it's an enterprise fund and know that we can set it aside in a separate article rather than have it be incorporated in the main budget article.
But there will still be, the intention is still to have a certain portion from the general fund. Is that true?
That'll be determined through the budget process.
Right.
There's been no,
Okay, let me rephrase. There's nothing in here limiting transfers from the
No.
There is
general
not.
fund?
No,
Okay.
you can't, an enterprise fund can have a general fund subsidy if you vote the annual number that way.
Okay.
And we haven't had a further policy discussion on what this would look like. But it would give great flexibility to the way Park and Rec operates, where if they've got one program that's a moneymaker and another that's a loser, that they, and just so long as it's all a wash, that.
correct, and the annual surplus is certified annually, whereas in a revolving fund, it's not, so you never never really know where you end,
Mhm.
what's encumbered, and
That's
the Park and
separate?
Rec Commission did vote to support this.
Okay, is that a separate audit, or is that the same
No,
audit?
It's looked at differently, but it's part of the same audit.
Same person, they don't have to hire someone separate from that, okay.
And the next article and the second recommendation from the management audit, management letter of our audit this year is to accept language regarding the OPEB liability trust fund, and I defer to Bonnie or Steve on the details of that.
Sure, basically this just authorizes us to enter into a formal trust agreement, where right now we have a trust fund, but it's really just a separate account. So it authorizes us to engage in a trust agreement document, and with all likelihood it will be with our existing trust fund commissioners. We're not anticipating any change like that, but it's a different form of accounting.
And I have one question on the trust fund. On the trust fund, do you, I'm sure other towns are doing it, so language and specifics of,
We have a trust fund investment policy already in
Okay.
place that the board adopted a few years ago, so we would have all of that
All that guidance,
documentation
okay.
bring after that. This authorizes us to start that process, so.
Yeah, there's some newer language of the controlling statute that is in essence what we're voting to accept and to put in a legally binding OPEB trust document, so.
so no one can touch it?
Right.
Okay.
Except by vote of town meeting. So it wasn't going anywhere anyway, but
No.
now it really won't.
It was separate, but now can only be
Okay,
kept here.
all right,
And that all helps your bond ratings too.
Yes, it will, yeah.
okay. Article 8, Community Preservation Act. We
This-
talked about this, Keith, but it looks like we're adding 1%, but I think, what did you say, it was
Yeah.
it was reenacted? so we
Right,
have to-
we're not doing,
just vote on the
we're
contract.
not increasing the Community Preservation Act, and what we are doing is voting to accept the amended language of the CPA, which allows a community like Littleton, which is taxing, or which assesses a surcharge of at least 1%, but not the full 3%. Possible under the CPA, that you can make up the difference between 1% and 3% with your own local monies and use that as the base for state matching funds. So we've had the discussion now for a number of years where if we could identify local funds, which we were going to spend anyway for open space purposes or something, maybe if we could put them into the CPA fund, then that act allows us to get maybe 35 cents on the dollar in state matching funds. So it's a smart thing to do from that standpoint. If you've got projects that would be funded by CPA, and we have a lot of them, and the list is growing, particularly of recreational projects. It was a little more difficult to do it. We did have an article in the annual town meeting, but we pulled it because the mechanism that is required by the Department of Revenue ends up being a little more of a circuitous route than we had thought, and it will ultimately be a three-step process in order to put any money in. Step one is to vote at a town meeting to accept the new Community Preservation Act language. Step two would be to have a ballot question at a regular town election, which means an annual town election or a state, a general state election, to accept the language. The next opportunity to do so is May of 2014. So November 2013, May 2014, if we accept them at both places, then the next town meeting you have after that, you could actually physically vote to move the money from one place into the CPA fund. So maybe about a year from now, we'd be able to do that if the other two steps come to pass.
And if there's funds available.
Yeah, and if there's the money, yeah, there's no guarantee that we would have a revenue stream each year to put in there, but in any year that we did, the way the law is written right now, it would increase our base for state matching funds.
So now, if this doesn't pass one or the other, does it mean we don't have any CPA, or we just fall back on the other
No,
one?
it means that we remain with the CPA as we have it now, which
Okay.
is 1% surcharge on all property with a $100,000 exemption for the first value of the residential and the commercial. Yeah.
But the new language in regards to using the CPA for, I'm gonna use recreation as an example. An existing recreation project like the 300 King Street project. It's not a new project, we're not buying land, it's there, we're upgrading. That language is not included, this is strictly for financial purposes.
That's right, that the language that Selectman Carr is referring to was part of the amended CPA that passed 2 years ago now, but it's already, that part of the language has already taken effect. A community can use CPA funds for a recreational rehab project on any recreation rehab project, not simply recreation land purchased with CPA funds, which was the restriction under the old law. So that we can do, just so long as you don't spend it on AstroTurf. So, and that's a fact, that's written. Artificial turf, you cannot use CPA funds for artificial turf, so. I don't know what lobby group got that in.
Some special interest get that
No
one.
one, no one's napping on.
All right, Article 9 is something that just came in, and Jim, do you want to introduce this one?
Sure. This is a lease agreement with, it's a lease agreement with the Littleton Electric Water Department with putting some solar panels up at the transfer station, along with some, their gas generator turbines that will generate electricity for the Littleton Electric Department, Light Department. And what it is, it's basically two things. The solar is a green initiative, obviously, that we've incorporated, and the generators are gonna be used to shed peak demands to help us all out with our electric bills, because the grid charges us based on peak demand. So shedding peak demand saves us all money in the long run. What this article is gonna do is allow the cell phone tower money to be used for the water department, some construction costs and the upgrades that they're looking to do. And be able to use the solar energy to pay for all the lights in the town for schools, town hall, all municipal buildings. And the savings from that will go into the CPC fund, I believe.
Yeah, a portion of the funds
A portion will
go into the CPA funds for what we
funds
just
To
talked
make up
about.
the 3%.
Article.
to make up the 3% and for open space, because there's the 4 buckets in the CPC. So it accomplishes a lot of things, you know, our green initiatives, our sustainability, and in the future, they're, you know, based on electric costs, it could even be more than what we're talking about right now. At minimum, whatever the surplus is in the cell phone towers will be put into the CPA funds for the land purchases, based on these articles passing, so.
Okay.
It's a win-win for everybody, I think, you know. The town can save money, and eventually, going forward, we could even save more money and generate more revenues based on cost of electricity.
Right.
So, matching the cell phone tower going to the CPC funds, and any surplus, the town can decide what it wants to do with that too, so, moving forward.
And then the peak shaving generator, that's something that is run when our rates are measured. Right? There's
Correct.
certain times where our rates are measured, so we generate our own electricity at those times, so we're using less off the grid, and that should bring our rates down.
Our rates down, correct.
For everybody, everyone who, yeah.
Everybody in the town.
For the town, yeah.
Yeah.
It was such an interesting proposal
Yeah.
when the Savas, or Ed Scott had approached town staff just on some of the numbers, and that that there were a couple of things that Light and Water needed to do. Number one, they need to do something to deal with peak demand, and to have a generator to help shave off their peak demand by having another source that they can bring online during peak periods, can help to lower the cost of electricity for all of the users in Littleton, and Foxborough for that matter. The other part of it was that they can put that anywhere. And the proposal is to put it on town property rather than their own property, to sort of have it be a revenue sharing. I mean, the article is labeled for starters revenue sharing, because the idea is if they're creating a new revenue source for the town, then that addresses the other issue. If they're giving us an equal revenue generator, if you will, over here, then there's another existing revenue generator that the water department badly needs. And the elegance of the solution is that it would say if it's on town property, the town keeps the revenues. If it's on water department property, the water department keeps the revenues. So no one is worse off at the end of the day for the money that we'd hope to have for the things we want to do. We'd have it. It was Jim's suggestion, because we had not had it in the draft that we were looking at it, but if you earmark the town's money substantially for the Community Preservation Act, then you're getting that 35 cents on the dollar on top of it as well. So it's there's a lot of studies to be done, there's a lot of work to be done between now and town meeting and the agreements, but it was just, a few of us have been nagging Savas over the years for where's our solar array, and wouldn't it be great if it were on our property? So I really have to commend Savas and Electric Light Department and Water for putting their thinking cap on here.
Right, and the commissioners are really thinking out of the box, which is really, really cool for the town and for, ratepayers. Ratepayers, we have one of the cheapest electric rates in the state as it is, and this is just gonna make us even more efficient, so it's really good.
Sounds good. Jerry, what do you have?
Question on the generators, I assume they're gonna be natural gas fueled?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, why not put them at a place where you can set up a combined heat and power system? Because even in a well-designed gas-fueled generator, you're throwing close to half your heat away. So at least in the wintertime, you can heat the school for free with the waste heat off your generator. If you stick it up at the transfer station, all that heat just gets thrown away.
That's above my pay grade. Bring it to.
That's a Savas question.
Sounds good, bring it to the committee.
We will.
Bring it to the
we'll ask them.
commissioners.
Yeah.
But I think that, the peak demand, is usually in the summer. And that's when they really take a look at your peak demands.
Sure.
So this is specifically for that, whether or not they'll be running them in emergency situations or anything like that. That's a good question to ask. I know, there's gonna be lots of studies done,
Right.
Jerry, on this stuff, so that's a good question for the commissioners.
Unless there's enough landfill gas out there in the world.
No. It's a nice thought, but I don't think that was big enough, yeah. Okay. Anything else? You guys want-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially what this is doing is moving the revenue from the cell towers that is currently going into open space to under the control of the water department, and then a direct offset by what they're proposing to build, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
right.
Into the
And I know that
into
we-
the CPC fund, so you get that extra bump.
Okay, well, that's one of the questions. The money currently goes into open space, and when it goes to CPC, some things change because it fits for the breadth of all of CPC at that point. The second thing is that I know a meeting a few months back, somebody came in, or whether they came to this meeting or at one of these meetings, they talked about the changes in the cell business, and that there was going to be a lot more things happening and a lot more pressure for towers. So if and I don't know whether this is true or not, but if you build out the cell towers so that they go to maximum, there's an increase in revenue for the water department. Is there corresponding equal increase going to happen for the money that goes into CPC?
There's
no prediction on that.
There's no
That's-
business terms
Yeah.
that, I mean, we haven't worked out all the business terms between the town and, that this is their proposal, in essence, that you just brought forth in the last several days. I think we'd have the opportunity to look at all of those business terms, no reason not to. But, the idea is let's create a new revenue generator, if you will, where right now we don't have one, and at the same time have the green energy project that folks have wanted.
One final question, and I understand there's not answers to all these tonight, but I'm sure there are questions that will occur, not just in my mind, but are we going to be putting up more towers on water department land? If that were to occur, how do they figure into this formula? And that would be another question.
Any future water towers that would be put up, each and every one would require further town meeting votes. I mean, if we're putting up new cell towers, if we're doing leases on existing towers, I think they probably have the authority to do that. But the water department does not have the authority to issue the leases. It's the Board of Selectmen that does it, although we've worked it out that the water department, Light and Water does it in your name. Savas has administered all of the bid processes. Town meeting votes to authorize the cell tower to occur at certain town property, but neither the examples of what we have, neither the cemetery commissioners nor the water commissioners can be in the cell tower business. That those things are administered by the general government, and so it would take a town meeting vote to do it. I guess the short answer is, if a new one comes up, then we talk about what the revenue sharing plan would be.
But this would
At that time.
inhibit the ability in any way for town meeting to decide if a future tower comes up, where the revenues go from that. And we can have town council look at it. I don't see anything in this language that establishes what all of the future looks like. And so I think we have the ability to take up each one and make the sound business decisions between the town and Light and Water.
The agreement, hasn't been executed yet, and when it finally does, it's existing funds and revenue sources. So, to your question of anything new, the town has to approve it, and the town has to say, this is where we want the revenues to go. So, this is just existing.
But we do have, cell towers in place that have more build-out capability. Or expansion, possible expansion. And I would like to make sure that is
Sure.
addressed one way or another, so that the townspeople can understand that when they vote.
Okay. Keith, is that something you can relate to?
Yeah,
the
we
commissioners?
certainly can, because the other thing the townspeople will understand that they vote is that if the water department doesn't have additional revenue to pay for all of the major
are going
capital
up.
projects, then the rates are going to go up for water rates, or the general fund subsidy will go up. So we're all in that boat together to help the water department find ways to fund
Function.
the costs that they've had to incur to
Because ultimately the town
provide
operates
water.
that.
That's right, yeah,
Yeah.
with the enterprise fund, we're the backstop, but also, the rates, in the first instance, it's water ratepayers who are property taxpayers.
So can you just give one quick summary about what this actually does, this bylaw? It's related to the funds, but,
It's an agreement.
yes, you agree.
Yeah, it's to authorize a lease agreement, and between the Board of Selectmen and the Light and Water Commissioners, and it would specify where the funds go as a result of the activities generated. In particular, the language looks to it cites all of the prior votes of town meeting pertaining to cell tower use. and all of the prior votes relating to use of cell tower funds. So all we're talking about is the delta, the difference between the total amount that comes in as revenue minus the amounts we've already committed because we've done so much borrowing for open space purchases. It's only the unencumbered, the intent is only the unencumbered balance would, instead of being in a fund for open space, it would remain the water department, and we would be replaced with additional money, which in this draft, it says it would go to the Community Preservation Fund. But frankly, even that is a policy decision of where do you want it to go?
Right.
So.
Can we do Article 10 real quick here?
Yeah, Articles 10 and 11 are easement articles requested by Highway and Town Council.
Light department.
Okay.
Anything to discuss? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? Just
Sidewalk and aerial easement, the poles related to the Great Road project.
okay. Okay. Let's hold there. We'll take a 2-minute recess, and then we'll come back for the public hearing at 8 o'clock.
All right, Joe.
How are you?
Well, you're always welcome to attend those meetings.
I'm lucky to make it to these.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things you can always submit any sort of ideas that you can keep, and you can pass that on to the committee. Yeah, oh, okay, yeah. So just to
But right now, we have
He's
cell towers on the water department.
Cell towers are used for. I know you do it at the transfer station. What about at the town garage?
Actually, a lot of the
Water department needs to find additional funding.
Why not?
Source of funds that they can tap into. So since the water department is also going to come up with the solar array.
Yeah, we have a lot going on.
Selectmen's property. The town would be no worse off.
in most cases, you're throwing away more.
Am I running Sunday? I think so. It'll be my first time in about a year. My niece, are you running?
From what I understand, biogas right off.
I may end up watching it, but they told me I'm going to have low numbers, so I gotta go.
That's our district.
No, that would not be part of this. That's not necessarily part of this.
You don't want to get up Sunday morning from behind?
And if you don't score.
Yeah, I don't.
My kids.
Let's put it this way. What's all matter? Make some biogas, run off the generator.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. With the time being 8 o'clock on September 16th, I'd like to open the public hearing for earth removal application from Richard Holloran, DBA Holloran Farm, 370 Harwood Avenue, Littleton, Massachusetts. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing pursuant to its regulations on earth removal on Monday, September 16, 2013, at 8 o'clock in the meeting room 103, Town Offices, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, on the application of Richard Halloran regarding a proposed composting operation on the property located at 370 Harwood Avenue. The applicant proposes to stockpile not more than 15,000 cubic yards total of raw composting material annually within the two designated composting areas. 15,000 cubic yards of raw composting material will yield approximately 3,000 cubic yards of compost annually. The compost yield is proposed to be sold and removed from the site. The proposed composting operation will occur on or above the existing grade with no excavation or disturbance of the existing topsoil or other soil material on the site. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen, Town Administrator's Office, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, 01460, by noon on Friday, September 13, or in person at the hearing. All interested parties are invited to attend. Ted Doucette, Chairman, Board of Selectmen, posted on August 13, 2013. And it was published twice on August 22nd and August 29th in the Littleton Independent. So we have the notice here, and we have some summaries, but we have the engineer. You want to go straight to the engineer or the proponent to discuss this proposal, to present this proposal? Is there anyone here to speak for this?
Me, right here. How you doing?
Good.
Halloran.
Okay.
How's everyone doing tonight?
All right, how you doing?
Good, good. Pretty much what you just said is what I'm looking to do there.
Okay.
I have a small farm where I bring in some leaves, and we turn the leaves over, make them into compost, and I need the permit so I can haul the material back out. So that's what I'm looking to do.
Okay.
Very simple. I'm trying to use the farm in an agricultural use. So I used to grow vegetables there on a small scale, but I don't have much traffic, so that really didn't work well for me. So the composting is a better option for me.
Okay.
Using my land agriculturally, so that's what I need to do.
Okay.
I have a copy of my plan here on my site.
Yeah, we all have it
Oh,
here.
you have it? All right,
Yeah. I think we haven't one able to hand it out, but sure. Okay. Hey, Keith, do you have anything to add in here?
We have some staff comments, and I think we have some staff members or others that are here that may have.
I think we got some. Jim, did you want to summarize your comments from Highway?
We're just trying to make sure that the town side or for the stuff that we do on the street is protected, that if there's debris that's dragged down the street, it gets cleaned up in a speedy manner, and that we don't have to do it, and there's no washout under the street, and, you know, these proposed truck routes, and I know we've had issues in the past with another facility down the street. Are those going to be the only truck routes that they have, and are they going to be specific, and if there's any signage that's needed, is the applicant going to be required to, you know, provide those and install them and maintain them?
Okay.
Is basically the summary of what, you know, we have a composting operation at the landfill, and it does smell it when you roll it at times, and I know we get in close proximity to some of the neighbors. You know, are they gonna put up some silt fence too to protect some runoff?
Okay.
Depending on which way the land slopes, it's hard to tell from the plan, it's small scale.
Okay.
Basically it from us.
Okay. Yeah, I see the two composting areas, and I'm a little bit familiar with the neighborhood. So the composting area 1, I believe, is up gradient, that being the residents are below that there, and that's a 35,000 square foot area. And then it's more clear on the other side, the slope seems to be greater, but there's a composting area number 2, which is 25,000 square feet. And that's up gradient from, it's a town land, and then there's some wetlands further back, but all the work is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. So, Mr. Halloran, were both these areas gonna be used all the time? Is that what we proposed, or is one gonna be used and the other was a backup?
Pretty much, one will be like a backup, depending on how much, leaves we get that fall. Depends on how thick the leaves are also. So this year, the leaves are a lot thicker than last year, so it might take up a little more space, but
Okay.
Is this operation going on all year, or this be limited to a
so I
certain?
just get the leaves in the fall, and then I get spring cleanup, and then pretty much just like fall and spring.
But how often do you have to turn them?
I have to turn like every 1 to 2 months, I really need to do it every month, but I only have time to do it like every 2 months, so. The faster I turn it, the faster it'll break down in the compost, so. But it should be done, every month. If I do it every month, I can break the leaf down like 7 months, making the compost in 7 months, so that's what my goal is to do.
What equipment, you just use a front end loader?
Just a
to-
front end loader, yeah.
Just gonna flip it one way and then flip it back the
Yeah,
other?
just take it from one row and put it to another, put it in rows.
Okay,
And it breaks down over a month, and just keep doing that. Makes the cycle and breaks it into compost.
okay. All right, Jim?
That was part of the comment in there. He has it listed from October through December, and that's sort of the question. It was very limiting, and now he's saying in the spring, so
Okay,
it's hard to distinguish when he's gonna do that.
yeah. Well, I would mention is, okay, do you want to answer it? When the peak hauling is gonna be when the stuff comes in the fall and the spring?
Yeah, like 90% of leaves will come in the fall between like the third week in October to like around Thanksgiving time, 1st of December. And then you get a little bit of our spring cleanup. And that's minimal, compared to what comes in the fall, so.
Okay. Board of Health had something, Anne Marie, Chair of the
Sure.
Board of Health? Yeah.
Yes, I'm Anne Laurie, Chair of the Board of Health. We have received a number of complaints over the summer from neighbors, maybe several a week, and then when things were turned, I think the 12th through the 14th of August, we received complaints from almost every neighbor in that neighborhood, multiple complaints regarding the turnover of the production of his composting. And our health agent went out at least several times, and apparently the grass clippings being added to the composting is causing part of the problem. But from our perspective, we have to answer to these complaints, and we also have to answer to DPH and DEP regarding the odors. And if they're bad enough, then we have to act on that. So we were hoping that in your submission of the earth removal permit, that you'd help us to mitigate the odor issue somehow.
Okay.
Maybe by limiting types of products that go into it, or by
Okay.
limiting the scope, because the neighbors are all getting this awful smell.
Right.
And it went on for months, it wasn't just,
It wasn't just when they turned for a couple days, it was...
it was ongoing. All summer long, we'd get a few every week, and then it was all at once when he
Yeah.
did do the turn. So, I mean, he has to be able to do his business, obviously, but at the same time, it's got to be compliant with DPH and DEP.
Yeah, okay.
So, that's our concern.
Mr. Halloran, go ahead.
Can you explain, so you already have a composting operation there? You're already doing this business at the site?
Yes.
Okay, and are you doing it in both of those two spots?
Pretty much, I'm only operating on the 3,500 square foot parcel right now.
Okay, and how many thousand square feet of leaves or debris are you bringing in annually at this point?
This year, I'm probably gonna bring like 10 to 12,000 yards. Bring that in, that'll make, that won't even make 3,000 yards of compost. I mean, you bring in the leaves and they break down to basically nothing, I mean, a tractor trailer load of leaves won't make a shovel full of compost, in reality,
Yeah, okay. So this operation has been going for some time now?
Yes, it has.
Okay. And you're before us tonight to ask for a permit to remove 3,000 square feet of the compost when it's finished?
When it's finished, yes.
Okay. Are you currently operating under a license that permits you to remove some amount of compost material when it's done?
No, I'm not. When I started bringing in the material, I wasn't aware that I needed that removal permit. And then when it was brought to my attention, I went about, obtaining the permit, so.
Okay, so you have compost on site?
Yes.
Which is ready to be taken away at this point?
It's not ready yet, no. I don't have some stuff ready now.
Okay. And the original leaves that came in for what's not ready now, came in when?
They came in last fall and some this spring.
Okay.
And the odor issue was, back in like the summertime, I brought in too many grass clippings. And it rained, we had all torrential downpours in like the spring and summer.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get up to mix the grass with the leaves in time. Because if you mix the grass as it comes in, there's no odor problem. But when I just kept bringing in the trailer loads, it just, I wasn't able to work it because of the weather, you know. And then I realized the amount of grass I brought in was too much.
Okay.
So when there was an odor issue, I just stopped bringing the grass in, and slowly the odor issue just stopped, you know what I mean? It took a little while for it to die down. But now it's broken down enough, so when you turn the pile, it's not gonna give off that odor like that. You know, so.
And for your operation, you need both, right? You need green and you need brown compost to make an
I
effective, good
need,
product?
I need some grass clippings. I don't need as many as I was bringing in, so. I wanna keep the neighbors happy so I can do this, you know what I mean? That means if I gotta do less, that means it's gonna be more for me in the long run, you know? So.
So where, I've distracted for a moment, where were you composting this summer when this happened?
On the upper level. you
On
know
the
what I mean?
composting area 1?
Yeah, and normally the wind blows in the other direction, and this year, you know, it was blowing right in the neighbor's windows, you know?
Yeah.
And I honestly could, I live right on the property, and I couldn't smell a thing from where my house is positioned, you know, so.
This, the 370 dwelling, that's shown on the
Yeah.
plan, that's what you're home
That's
with?
where I am, yeah.
Okay.
Everything was blowing over towards Colonial Drive, so.
Yeah.
And the grass clippings were causing that, so I just, you know, totally stopped hauling them in, and I haven't brought in a load since, you know, August 12th or the
Okay.
10th, when Jim came out, looked at the site, and he's like, you know, we gotta stop the grass clippings because of the odor issue, and I said, not a problem. So I stopped doing that. I don't look to bring anything else in until the third week or 1st of November, when the leaves come off the trees.
All right. We have a letter from Conservation saying that they are out, that it's outside the buffer zone. Is there anyone from Conservation to speak to this? Okay. Oh, I did, sorry. Wait, just speak in, sorry.
James Pickett, Conservation. I believe there's a 200-foot buffer there. I've been talking with Sarah Seawood about that, rather than a 100-foot buffer because of the riverfront.
Okay.
That needs, I feel as though it should maybe be reviewed by the Conservation Commission and checked out, make sure it's...
So when you say review, you're gonna establish a line? Someone's gonna
Yeah.
flag it?
Yeah.
And then
Check it out.
check it out, okay.
Yeah. We've had, there's some very steep bankings there,
Yeah.
and I just think it might be worthwhile having the Conservation check it out.
Okay.
Have Richard come in and,
RDA or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
just come in and have a discussion with us.
Okay,
Not a problem.
okay. All right, let's see, who else
So,
do we have?
Mr. Chair, I just
Yeah.
have one question.
Yeah.
So the line existing is a 100-foot barrier, is that what I'm reading here? Or-
Yeah, there's
So
100,
you got a 100-foot buffer right now, and you're, Mr. Pickett, you're saying possibly a 200-foot?
Yes, because of the riverfront, because of the discharge from Long
Long
Lake
Lake.
there.
oh yeah, there's a perennial stream down there, right? We got the 100, yeah.
But the 100-foot, is it from the stream or from?
What I'm saying, well,
Wetlands
there's,
itself?
there's 2 buffer zones, well, there's actually 3. There's there's a 100-foot and a 200-foot for a river, and then there's a 100-foot off the wetland. What's shown on here is the 100-foot riverfront, and then there's the 100-foot wetland is shown, but the 200-foot riverfront is not shown.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And, oh, then the other issue was that these are just from Mass GIS, they weren't actually flagged. These limits shown on this plan by Foresight, they were just, they weren't flagged. Okay. All right, let's see, who else do we have comments from here? Building inspector, Roland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only involvement is, I'm the one that recommended Mr. Halloran come before this board and seek a special permit for soil removal. Last year, I received a complaint about truck traffic. This on the heels of having another site that we've worked with for several years in the area. It was a wait and see through the winter, and this spring, I approached Mr. Halloran again and asked him to seek approval from this board regarding the soil removal process. So that's my only concern.
Okay, thank you. And,
Can I ask another question?
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Halloran, how many truckloads a day during the peak season are you talking about?
Now they could be 5-6 truckloads.
Every day?
Not every day, no, depending on, you know, we want to work Monday through Saturday, but they're not every day, no.
You're talking, I'm sorry.
And by the end
You
of,
might get 5 one day, and then 2 weeks, you might get another 5, you know? So, like the day Roland showed up, I had 2 trucks there, that I didn't have any more trucks for 2 weeks, you know, so.
so once again, once you pass that peak season, in the middle of winter, you have nothing, but then we pick up again in the spring when you take the stuff out.
No, I won't, this stuff won't be ready to, the small amount of compost I have might be ready in the springtime. And,
But what I'm driving at, if you have the full business going, most of your truckloads obviously will happen during the fall, and then you'll have another time when it goes out. When does it go out?
it goes out when it's ready, and when it's, there's an open market to move it, so.
About a year later, I think, timeline he was talking about. 7 months to a year later is
7
what I'm
months to a
gathering.
year when it's ready, yeah.
Okay.
And what are we talking about for trucks? You talking about 10-wheelers or trailer dumps?
Trailers.
Okay.
How many square feet does a trailer hold?
Oh, those trailers are about 30 yards.
Cubic feet, so
Oh,
30
cubic
yards
feet,
is
so,
2,700.
yeah. No, it's not that much, not
270.
270.
Cubic feet.
Cubic feet.
It's, the trailer dumps are similar to a tractor trailer. Little
So these are
smaller.
very, very fluffy though, I mean, it might look intimidating, but once you dump them, they just break right down.
Yeah. Okay, Alex, you have anything?
Yeah, I do. Your hours of operation, what times a day are you receiving, and what times a day would you be considering shipping out?
About 7 to 3:30. Maybe 4 at the latest, but, you know, all the trucking's done about 3.
And is that 6 days a week?
5 to 6 days, yeah.
But not every day,
Only in
same
the
thing is
peak
coming
season.
out. But, and it's only, it could be a truck or two one day, and
Yeah.
it's not
You
gonna
get
be
5 another day, yeah.
constant 5 hauls, you know.
No, no,
loads-
it's not like that, no.
5 loads, you're not gonna be taking out a load every hour.
Are you receiving from local contractors, or are you receiving in bulk?
I'm receiving from one contractor, one only. It works with the DEP, and when the DEP came out and looked at my site, they told me I had the cleanest site in the state, and they really like working with the man that I work with. He has a good reputation, and he does he makes a lot of compost with UMass. And, you know, they've had good luck with him, and I've had good luck with him too, so,
So you're currently permitted by DEP?
yes.
Um,
And they're happy to see the site, they like the site, and they like to see that type of operation being done, because recycling leaves, you know.
yeah.
I thought there might be some room for the town to bring some stuff in there, and maybe do some composting with my compost, but I guess they already have their own compost site, but in time, they might need extra room, so.
Hopefully,
That's what we have to do, is start recycling things, you know? Where are you gonna go, you know? If you're gonna work with trees, you might as well work with the leaves, right?
So I guess we'll take some public comment on this. I think my comments initially are that, you know, the plan, as far as conservation is concerned, I know only one place is near there, but without the flagged wetlands, I think we have to get an official ruling from conservation before we can rule.
Well,
Because everything-
that's for the site plan. I mean, what we're authorizing is
Oh, yeah.
the removal of earth. Conservation, I mean, we can say in our permit that conservation must approve, but what we're saying is, once he gets dirt, we're allowing him to take the dirt out. That's essentially what we're saying. Now, what restrictions, I think, Anne Marie was saying, if we can help out the Board of Health with odor by limiting in our removal permit, I mean, is that something legally that we can do? I mean, so if we have these different type of restrictions in the removal permit, you know, we're not here to say conservation will.
No, but can't we wait? Can we approve it without, can we say we have to wait till we hear from them?
Oh, no, we can wait.
He has to clear all of the boards before he comes to
Sure,
us? Is
absolutely.
that something within our?
Absolutely.
Within our-
You can do that, yeah, we've often, these applications have often taken more than one session of the public hearing. You identify issues tonight, continue the hearing to another date, by which time we would hope to hear back from the other regulatory boards with whatever conditions they would like to have us impose for approval.
Okay. All right, so there's some residents that have shown up here, so we'll take those tonight as well. Please, when you make your comments, please state your name and your address for the record and direct all comments to the board. Who would like to speak on this matter? Yes, sir.
Jerry, I'm not a resident, but I was just very surprised to hear that here's a person manufacturing an agricultural product, and he's gotta get a permit to remove what he makes off his own property? This,
Well, why don't you live next to it?
well, that's a different issue, I mean.
Direct all comments, yeah, okay, we'll hear, we'll hear from him, okay.
You know, it doesn't, I mean, by this logic, does Graves need an earth removal permit to distribute sand and gravel from his operation, or Agway to sell topsoil? I mean, it seems to me that the whole idea of these earth removal permits was that you're not destroying the natural landscape of what's there to begin with, not to,
Roland
Yeah.
should be able to answer that question.
and as far as these other issues of odors and/or whether it's an appropriate use in ostensibly a residential zone, well, that's really between the Board of Health and other regulatory boards, but just, I'll defer to Roland's explanation, but it just seems a little strange that if you're making topsoil or compost, that you need permission to remove what you've made.
Do you want to direct that, do you want to
Sure.
comment on that?
I think
Comment,
you
Roland?
answered your own question, Jerry. We have a bylaw for soil removal, and if you're removing soil from the site, then you need a permission from the Board of Selectmen.
It doesn't matter where it came from.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, I certainly understand that the permit in question right now is simply for...
Name and address.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
Jeff Schachter from 6 Richard Way.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sorry about that. I certainly understand that the permit in question right now is about the removal of the soil. I do appreciate the potential of getting the approval of the other boards as part of it, because certainly my concern is the smell, and it sounds like the Board of Health is the appropriate board to consider that. One thing I'd like to state for the record is that in my experience observing the operations, the odor seems to be more connected to the arrival of animal waste, manure, rather than grass clippings. And I mean, it's a very obvious difference in smell.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been discussed so far at all. I don't know whether that factors into the consideration of the permit. I understand that it might be necessary to make the composting happen, to have some of that present. But I just wanted to state for the record that there was a significant amount of animal waste, and I believe in my unscientific assessment, that's the source of the odor that we're all concerned about, not the grass clippings.
And do you feel, can you describe from your experience when the odors were? Was it constant? Was there a certain peak?
It seems to be correlated either with the arrival of trucks bringing in the animal waste when it's first delivered, or...
No, sir, yeah, I'll come right back to you. I'll come right, as long as he's on.
Or when the piles are being turned.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it lasts for several days. I think after the delivery, it's stronger than after it's been turned. After it's been turned, it's like a day or two. The delivery, there was that one weekend in August, the Board of Health mentioned that it went on and on and on.
Yeah.
That seemed like days.
Yeah, okay. All right, sir, you want to address the...
I know that
manure?
the odor was offensive during the summertime, and what that was the grass clippings. I had a large amount of grass clippings with all those downpours and rain,
Yeah.
it just soaked it and I couldn't move it, but I never brought animal waste in. I mean, I did 10 years ago when I dated some house girl, but I will not bring horse manure to my land. You know what I mean? I don't like it, and I will not dump that there. I mean, that belongs somewhere else. I told my neighbors, you shovel your stuff, I'll shovel mine.
Do you have it at the property for other uses? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar,
on
so
my
you don't have
property.
any
I
animals?
don't bring any animal waste in there.
All right.
And honestly, like, if you were to bring horse manure, I don't want that mixed with my compost, and I
Yeah.
will not mix it. And that stuff really doesn't even give off a smell, it's mostly like sawdust, you know what I mean? And that's what you're mixing, is sawdust in there, I can't mix that, I can't have it, you know?
Okay. What can you do to reduce the odor?
I could not bring in as much grass. I had too much grass, and with the rain, it was a very, very rainy season. See, if I mix the grass right away with the leaves, you can't smell it. You can smell it a little bit, but not like you could this summer.
Are there additives that you can dump on it, mix with it to keep the odors down, or?
Just leaves, and I get a lot of debris from my wood business, like tree bark and the tree matter breaking down.
Yeah.
And I mix that and I can cover it up that way.
Okay.
But if you go up to the site now, you can't smell a thing out there. You know what I mean? And the grass that is there on my site is broken down enough, so if you turn it, it's not going to give off like the gases where it's past that point.
Okay. Anybody else like to speak on this? Yes, sir?
David Jowers, 367 Harwood. I live directly across the street from Mr. Halloran. And I was honestly surprised that he's been doing it for a year. I've smelled it maybe 3 or 4 days out of a year. And I drive right by, like I said, I'm directly across. I could see it at one time. And the smell is not that bad. Yes, you can tell there's something there. I've never smelled animal manure, but it smells like grass clippings. And oh, by the way, I cut my yard and I rake leaves, and it doesn't smell any different than when I have a pile in my yard. I agree with the other gentleman. He's not removing soil from his land. I think the whole need for this permit is wrong, because he is bringing stuff on, mixing it, and bringing it off. He should not need a permit to bring the compost off unless he is digging the ground. He's not doing that. So I think that is entirely wrong. He should not be required to do that. But, you know, there's nothing that he has ever done that bothered me as a neighbor. The smell is not bad. He's a farmer. We've got farms all over here. Are we going to tell other farmers they can't grow food because they put fertilizer on and it smells bad? We all want compost and mulch for our yards, and we've got to have somebody to do it. But the whole reason to have a permit to remove the stuff is I think he was given poor guidance to have to come here. He shouldn't even need to be here.
Well, I appreciate that, and
Not digging soil.
I'm sorry, you just say Jowers, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just looking at the plan here, so you are across the street, and admittedly, there are people closer than you that may be closer to these piles. That's what I'm seeing.
Some of the piles have been in different places.
Yeah.
And even when they were close, you barely smelled it.
Okay.
And it was, like he said, it was during rain. About the only time was when it was actively raining, and you're not going to be out turning compost when it's actively raining.
Okay.
So, Chairman, we've heard a couple of times whether it's even necessary for him to be here to get this permit, and we talked about bringing it in, hauling it out, and then referring to it as agriculture, and I'm not clear on the definition of that. And I think that's probably one of the questions we have to have
Okay.
answered at some point.
You have it?
The town code?
Yeah, you have the
Yes, I
actual
do.
bylaw? All right.
Find it.
All right. In the meantime, anybody else have any? Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. My name's Greg McGarr, and I live at 7 Richard Way. And I would just like to say that since we moved in, which was in August 2012, there have been several times when we have had a very strong and offensive odor in the neighborhood. Mr. Jowers over there said it isn't that bad. I fully disagree. I mean, there's been days where I haven't been able to let my kids play outside because it smells that bad. So I would just like the board to take that into consideration when thinking about or considering this permit.
And again, is it lengths of time?
It's about, over the summer, I'd say there were about 3 different instances, about a month apart, where we would get a very strong odor that would linger for 2, 3, 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I see a lot of different sides of the point. It's not an easy issue because we do obviously, there's a green initiative. I think it's it's a farm, it's zoned agricultural, and I think we just really want to do our best to support both sides. Do you have something?
I have the bylaw that Mr. Bernier quoted. It's chapter 147, section 47-1. It says, "The removal of soil, loam, sand, gravel from any parcel of land not in the public use in the town of Littleton, except as hereinafter provided, may be allowed only after a written permit therefore is obtained from the Board of Selectmen after a public hearing of which due notice is given." It's from 1977.
What's the exception?
Hold on. Okay, it says, no permit shall be required unless it's incidental and in connection with the construction of a building. That's the exception. And it says that the Board of Selectmen may impose conditions not specifically provided for herein as it may deem necessary for the adequate protection of the neighborhood and the town. Any conditions imposed by the board shall be attached to and made part of the permit. So it sounds like that's under our purview, and certainly we can take recommendations from the Board of Health or any other Conservation Commission, but that the conditions attach on our discretion.
So it sounds like regardless of the opinion of it, it seems to be black and white and pretty straightforward that that's, we're required. So now that we find ourselves here, we obviously want to balance out everybody's concerns. Let's table this public hearing to open, or my proposal is to table this public hearing to open the next public hearing, which we will then table and come back to this one. Sound good? All right. Being 8:30, I will open the public hearing to amend the license to use land for explosives and inflammable materials. The Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, September 16, 2013, at 8:30 p.m. at the Littleton Town Offices, Room 103, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, to amend the license issued to the Town of Littleton for the use of land for explosives and inflammable materials, to change the subject property address to 39 Air Road, and to change the licensee's business address to 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen, Town Administrator's Office, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, by noon Friday, September 13, 2013, or in person at the hearing. Littleton Board of Selectmen, Ted Doucette, Chairman. Published on the Littleton Independent on August 29th and posted on August 21st. Okay, so we'll do a motion to table, or can we just table? Okay, so we'll just table that and come back to the previous land removal, the soil removal hearing. Any other selectmen comments?
I think the main concern here is going to be the odor issue.
Oh, yeah,
and
clearly.
the conservation issue.
Yeah,
But if I can eliminate that odor, which I have, and I think it'll be a good thing. And the amount of grass clippings, and it was a very, very wet summer too, and very hot too.
We're going to hear from a few more, but I think what we're going to be looking for is some sort of assurance and some sort of reaction, when the time, when they come in, that you don't let the, somehow that, it's some guarantee that you won't let the condition, which you say is the grass clippings build up.
Oh,
something
I
like
won't
that,
use as
so.
many grass clippings.
Yeah.
I need some to break the leaves down to make the compost, but
Yeah.
I don't need to bring that amount, you know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. Did you have something?
Tom Mann, 2 Brandy Hollow, not in the butter.
Okay.
I have a question about the controls put on the incoming material to keep hazardous waste from coming on the site.
Okay. All right. Can you answer that? Can you address that? Do you have any
Yes, what I'm
controls?
bringing in is, I'm bringing in all very, very clean leaves. They were like taken out of yards with like a leaf vacuum, and there's very, very, very few scraps of anything in there. And I'm very, very conscious about stuff like that, how I keep my yard and stuff, so that there's no waste in my yard.
What type of sites is this brought from?
It's just taken off of a residential lawn, you know what I mean? And people rake up their leaves and dispose of them and stuff.
So you work for one large contractor who picks up all these leaves off of residential areas, puts them in a truck, brings them to your place?
Yes.
Basically, so.
Yeah, one person only.
Yeah.
And they can assure a very clean product too, because I don't want junk in there, you know what I mean? I don't want it, I don't want horse manure, I don't want it, you know what I mean?
Are there any
Well,
testing, are there any testing requirements for that, or are there any way to identify potential hazardous waste or hazardous materials in these?
Well, I mean, all we're bringing in honestly is leaves. I'm not trying to dump any hazardous stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not a hazardous type person or a very environmental conscious person, you know what I mean? I want to do for the good of the community, you know what I mean? I donated several acres of land to the conservation out there, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
could have sold to somebody or whatever. I plan on donating a lot of that land to the conservation, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So,
All right.
then I can donate 10% to my church so they can pray for me, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Do you have your DEP permit number handy?
I do. You have to give me a minute, okay?
Sure. Any other public comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I thought I heard him say earlier that DEP was one of his clients that he was able to get rubbish from.
I don't think so. I think he just said
Is that
that
what
he
he said?
was, they were out there and they come and inspect it. You want
Okay,
to
all
repeat
right.
what you
So
said
they were
about
one of your
DEP?
clients?
No, not
Okay.
DEP, no.
Yeah.
I thought he said that.
Okay.
There's no manure either.
Then first, because she hasn't spoken, sir? Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Nicole O'Mahony, 3 Conan Drive. So I haven't called any of you guys this year about the odors. I talked to Richard directly about it. And he has done work to get rid of the grass clippings, and it has reduced the amount of odor. However, the compost pile has now been moved directly behind my house. And without any controls in place, I have concerns. This has cost me money when the smell is as horrible as it is. I have to shut all the windows and turn on the AC. My bill for August, though it was, the average temperature was lower than last year, was significantly higher over previous years. My cat has an undiagnosed fungal infection on her ear that is likely from the spores or the growth in the compost pile. So I know it's not a discussion of whether or not there should be a permit to compost. I guess I'd ask, and you know, I've worked with Richard and he's been helpful in this, making sure that he limits the grass clippings, but I am concerned that there's, you know, what comes on to the property, how is it handled, and how is it managed? And I think there is a health concern, you know, once we got the letter from you guys to come here, I did a lot of investigation, and there is different types of fungal infections that can be caused from composting if certain measures aren't put in place. The other concern I have is that my house and my property is south of the composting pile, and I don't know what concerns I should have, if any, about, I have well water. So is it getting in the groundwater? Is it, I mean, it's just dirt on top of dirt.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's in it.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that, you know, any wells these days are disconnected from the surface water because they're all bedrock wells. They're sealed in there, but.
My well's from a long time ago.
Is it? Yeah. But that is something to consider, whether there would be any type of testing, yeah. You know, I look at this site plan by Foresight, and you have two areas marked out there, and it looks like it's simple enough to move over and compost in this area, but then when I look at the site plan, the aerial photography here, it shows that you know, there's active composting in both areas. You have a lawn or a yard there, obviously you live there, so there's limitations on moving the piles there. So that was one thing I was thinking, we can just flip-flop the two composting areas, but it seems that that's not possible, because you have more material than you would use in this 25,000 square foot area.
I just was gonna use those two spots, and
Yeah,
that was it.
yeah.
And the place on the right of my driveway was like a backup area, so.
What's the board's pleasure? Any thoughts?
I'd say we need to hear back from, you know, the regulatory boards, get their input before we even have a motion made. I'd continue the hearing until we hear back from, we're gonna set some meetings, maybe pick a meeting for the Board of Health, Conservation Commission, to go out, take a look, and come back with recommendations.
Yeah, I just think that, I think it hasn't passed the test for conservation because Foresight, you know, and I understand that, you know, this was either done quickly or tried to done with the least cost, and, you know, with using the wetlands from Mass GIS, it's not the best way to proceed. Those are can be very inaccurate, and you're always supposed to have a test, so I think there should be a flagging done out there, or meet the, whatever, you need to meet the conditions of the Conservation Commission.
And this product doesn't make like a silt, like when you have like topsoil, and you dig in the topsoil and the silt runs off, it's not like loam or anything.
Yeah, I know, but it's just anything that happens within 100 foot of the buffer
understand.
zone, you know, you gotta go.
I don't want anything in the wetland,
Yeah.
because it's appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, he is scheduled to be before our board the 24th of September, 7 o'clock.
Okay,
So,
all right, yes, sir?
I would like to readdress, I know Ms. Brownson read the regulation or whatever, but I'd like to take it to a lawyer and have him do a read on it, because he is not removing stuff, it's a transit point. So he's not removing what is the ground. He is transiting something in, putting it on the ground, and then removing it. So I still think this law does not apply to the requirement, or, you know, his case does not apply to that. And if you think it does apply, or if the lawyer does, then I think we should go to all the companies in town that are transiting gravel, loam, or whatever, and have them come before the board also. instead of choosing to single out Mr. Halloran. Because I would like to know if Agway has a permit to remove mulch from their operation, and the gravel place, just down the road or whatever. So I think we're singling out an individual, and I still don't think that law applies to his situation. It's a transit point.
Has town council taken a look at this, Keith?
Town council has not
All right.
reviewed this application.
It shouldn't be too much for him to take a look at
No.
and be able to get back to you. I do see your point. When we do have complaints, we want to try to find some
Yeah.
measure to address
Yeah.
everybody.
Happy to get a
I
ruling,
think it's-
happy to get a ruling in that.
I see both sides, and I'd like to see both sides satisfied, happy. Jerry, any one thing?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the previous speaker's comments that we can start getting at the semantics here. He's making compost.
Yep.
It may be a bit of a stretch to call that loam or soil.
Mhm.
It's a distinct product. I think you ought to look into that. And as far as these other issues, if there's an odor complaint, you have the Board of Health. He's already permitted by the DEP. If there are issues of truck traffic, I believe the police department and/or highway can address that as a separate issue. But it sounds here like this poor fellow's being, as far as Conservation Commission, that's a separate issue as well. He has to report to all these boards anyways, and I see this as just being another hurdle thrown in the way of a farmer. And I would like to see a review to make sure that this isn't kind of a stretch of the law.
All right. We can get that, and we'll have it, I don't know how we can respond to everybody, but we can, obviously, if we continue the public hearing, we'll have, if town council comes back and says we
Sure,
should, then we just won't.
we've got an
town-
email
yeah.
chain.
Close the hearing at that?
Yeah, but the other thing is that we do understand that there are regulations such as this and bylaws, and we're gonna start looking at some of those, and for the last couple of years, we have been looking at a lot of bylaws, we haven't gotten to this yet, and we wanna start looking at selectmen policies and things like that too. So hopefully we can, if there's anything like this that should be eliminated, we can work on that. Conservation is gonna be at least a month, I would imagine.
The next meeting is, I'm sorry, Heather from the
Yeah,
applicant.
yeah.
The next meeting probably we heard of is October 7th, would be the next one, we do a full discussion, but the meeting is.
Okay.
For the third, it's been told, so.
All right.
October 7th, we do a full discussion, if it's something that Mr. Collins can, we get a
Our
public
next one
hearing,
after that is the
all this
21st.
wetland stuff done by then, the public notice for that is, that's actually this Thursday, so. To get an actual public hearing, it needs to be done for an NOI or an RDA, then we're looking at this, second week of October, which is, I think, the 23rd.
Right. Why don't we at least move to the 21st of October? That way, if he's not quite done, there'll be some sort of indication, some sort of update.
And if you would, Mr. Halloran, could you provide Town Administrator Keith Bergman with the DEP permit number so we know what the state has said you're permitted to do? Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I think we need a motion to continue the public hearing to a specific date and time.
When we go with
October 21st at say 8 PM.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing for earth removal application for 370 Harvard Road till October 21st, 2013.
Harwood.
Howard, I'm gonna say.
Harwood.
Oh, Howard. Howard Ave.
Is there a second?
Yes, sorry.
Motion made and seconded to continue the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So we'll see, any updates that you have in the meantime?
Okay.
Send them on to us and.
All right, I'll get you that
Yeah,
number.
we'll stay in touch on all these issues.
I appreciate it, okay.
Okay.
Make it work.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody, for coming in. 8:30, so we have a public hearing. It sounds like a big deal here. It's more or less just to change the address of business. Jim, do you want to speak, or Keith? But I mean, something about it.
It sounds ominous, license of land for, flammable materials, flammable and explosive materials. It's the highway department gas tanks, and that it was pointed out to us by the fire inspector that the license, the form of the license that was issued many years ago needs to be corrected in two ways. First, it needs to reflect the current business address of the town of Littleton, which is 37 Shattuck Street. It no longer is 20 Foster Street, because town offices are here, not there. And secondly, that the location of the licensed premises needs to be more specific. It says Air Road. Right now, it should say 39 Air Road. So that's the sort of totality of the changes that we're making as a result of this hearing, but you do have to go through the hearing process to amend the license.
Anything from the board? Anything from the public? Jim? I mean, you're on the public also. Right.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 148, Section 13, to approve the application of the Town of Littleton to amend its license for land for explosives and inflammable materials for fuel tanks at the highway garage to reflect the location of the subject premises as number 39 Air Road and the business address for the town of 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts.
Mr. Chairman, we need to close the hearing first.
Yes, sir, we do. Yep.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Second it?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I'll second that motion.
And so moved.
Yeah, and we also have a motion to approve, yep.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Get me on my rhythm. All right, let's see.
Meanwhile,
Back at, what'd you say?
item 5.
Yeah.
And item 5.
So we left off with Article 11, we're up to Article 12.
Article 12 is a request from the cemetery commissioners, and they are going to be reviewing it with the Conservation Commission. But town council felt it important to get this matter onto the warrant now, and we will work out any issues conservation has. But this has to do with there's a portion of the cemeteries project which requires which required wetlands delineation and for open space to be set aside. We were not able to get a third party willing to accept the conservation restriction, which leaves the only entity that could hold it is the Conservation Commission itself. And actually, they can't hold a restriction. They, on town property, all they can do is own it. So the proposal is to transfer that portion of the cemetery property to the Conservation Commission. Therefore, by that act, it will be in conservation use. We still have to work out the details with conservation, and we are pledged to do that between now and town meeting. But the cemetery commissioners have asked that we put the article in the warrant so that they can complete their project, which we've been working on for a couple of years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could be going on the third.
All right, no issues there. Article 13 is from the planning board. It's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment to change the uses allowed in the downtown districts and to redefine vehicle retail sales and to prohibit vehicle retail sales. So this will change the zoning. All existing uses will be grandfathered, but there are changes to that will allow no new.
Public hearing coming up on this too.
The public hearing on this proposed zoning amendment will be on October 17th. The planning board met last Thursday. They discussed 2 potential zoning articles for this special town meeting. This is the only one that they voted to bring forward. The other one, extensive recreation, they did not.
And this
they did not advance for this town meeting.
And this is as already worded.
This is
There's no
the
motion to be-
form. Yeah, this is the form that will be in the warrant as posted. And after their public hearing, they may or may not choose to, make further amendments in their recommendation.
Okay.
But they can still amend this.
Yes, they can amend it
After the public hearing.
after the public hearing and prior to, and on, and in town meeting amendments could be made to it, but this is the form that they're satisfied with for purposes of posting the
Town
warrant.
council seen it?
Yes, town council wrote it at their direction.
Any thoughts, concerns?
So simply, it's changing the zoning not to allow motor vehicle sales.
No more car dealerships, no more Toyotas.
Okay.
Well, we won't need, not just, not Toyota, we're talking about Chevy. Ford, yeah,
That's the only dealership we have in town.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what we're talking about.
yep, okay.
What they're talking about, I should say.
Okay. Article 14 was proposed by the what is it, committee to?
Study committee
to increase voter participation.
although they want to be known as the committee, formerly known as the
Okay.
committee, study committee.
But that's another time for another agenda.
Well, here's my thoughts on this, is that a lot of times the way these things will work is that, you know, if it's committees that are put forth by the selectmen to study, any recommendation is usually brought forward and discussed, and there's a presentation before. So this seems to be putting the cart before the horse, where we have a warrant article that hasn't been really presented, or any thoughts have been put before the selectmen. Given that, my thoughts on this are, in order to go forward with this, I would need to see something that we can bring to town that shows that this works. So for those who are not familiar with it, it says, no warrant articles that requires a supermajority vote to authorize the town to take action shall be considered by town meeting if discussion is on such article commences after 9:30 p.m. unless town meeting votes by 2/3 majority to waive this requirement. So my thoughts on introducing this is that we need to know that this is going to do something to increase participation, not decrease participation, before we go forward with it. That's my initial thought. Alex, I think you're on the committee, so I can move it to you, to Keith, or
At our
somebody
committee
else?
meeting, we heard this came from a resident who suggested it. We discussed it, and actually, we decided to delegate to members of the committee to make the presentation rather than it be me making the presentation, so to talk about this. I will suffice to say that this is an item that the committee has discussed previously and heard from the public many times about the lateness of town meeting, and those of us who attend understand what that discussion is. But I will leave it to the members of the committee who are here to answer questions tonight. I won't steal the stage. So.
Okay. Anyone else on the board?
Not yet.
Lana?
Moderator is here too.
Oh. Your service to moderator.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I've only recently seen this myself. I do have some thoughts, but I'd be interested in hearing a presentation as to what the problem this solution was created for. So,
All right.
all ears.
Okay. Does the board wish to hear a presentation tonight? Usually we don't take I mean, we've gone through 13 articles already, we haven't had a presentation. Do we want to wait and have a presentation and consider it? Alex requested time earlier from me, and my response at that time was, well, I don't think we have time tonight. I mean, we can make time, but I think that being asked to see a presentation now and then to decide whether or not to put it on the article is a little bit, I think there's a lot of discussion to have that needs to go on beyond tonight.
With all due respect, by not taking the time, then you're essentially deciding it doesn't belong on here.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't think it's been properly discussed, that we know that it'll make a difference, and moderator has some thoughts, I have some thoughts, I think some of the board members have some thoughts. I mean, is there a problem with coming back and giving us some presentations in December, January, and putting it on for May, when we have, full thoughts on it?
If I
Just
may.
in a minute, yeah, go ahead, yeah, does anybody else?
I echo some of the thoughts you have, because to me, it was kind of new. What's that procedure on a committee like this? It just seems like we haven't had a chance to discuss it. And when we talk about voter participation, we're not asking, we haven't given the voters an opportunity to hear what's going on. So that's what my concern is. We're going directly to town meeting.
And this is not a small change, and this is town code. This is not a regulation, this is amend
This
town
isn't a
code.
policy change,
Yeah.
that was my concern too, and I echo the same concerns. I guess, Just to vet it out, I think the moderator put it right, you know, what is the solution? Why is this a solution to what? You know, and to hear a discussion about it, that's all. And is it critical to make a decision right now for November, and what if we do wait till May? Is it?
We survived 299 years without it.
Earth-shattering to delay it, to vet it through maybe another meeting and have a presentation for the entire town to see.
And public comment, yeah.
Or we could just hear what the committee has to say tonight, and it might take all of 3 minutes. I mean, do you have a PowerPoint here that's gonna take an hour to present?
Oh, just a minute, just a minute.
I mean, my
Yeah.
concern is that we're talking about not listening to what they could say, and we could maybe make a decision tonight, and then bring it to the voters to then vote on. We're not
Yeah.
changing code without asking all the folks in town. We're asking if this to be voted on at town meeting. We're not
Well,
forcing it
yeah.
upon people.
No.
They can vote no.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of history here. There were several proposals that were brought to the Voter Participation Committee, and I asked the question at the last meeting, are there any that we feel should come forward at this time and can effectively come forward given the short period of time we have? This one surfaced. The others will be points of discussion, which will take much longer. But this one, the committee members felt was something that could happen, and we felt that there was enough information that we've received over the period of time we've existed that it would not be inconsistent with the way a lot of people were thinking about town meeting.
Okay, is this also, another question was raised, is this the charge of the voter participation study, the committee has increased voter participation? Is this even the charge, is another question.
Well, I think it is within our charge, because if this is in any way going to help voters participate in town meeting and feel that they can be part of town meeting, feel like they want to come to town meeting, that's voter participation. And so it would fall in our charge.
If it does increase voter participation, yeah.
I would say that we believe it does.
Okay, how? Can you let me, I'll go to Alex in just a minute, but if you want me to go to this, Alex, right away, or do you want to talk a little bit about it?
No,
first?
I want you to hear what the committee members have to say.
And that's what I just said, I just asked you, do you
Yeah.
want this Alex or that Alex to talk about it?
No, that's, in the end, I want how we decided that we were going to present it to have happen. Now or later, whenever, but I think you should hear what has to be said.
Okay. I'll ask again. Do you want to present it, or do you want me to go to Alex?
I said earlier, I would like them to present it.
Okay. Alex, do you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, I know you have something to say. Why don't you share it with
Yeah,
us?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will promise you now it'll take less than half the time that we just spent talking about it. How's that for strange verbiage? So the idea behind this is pretty simple, which is why we don't have a comprehensive presentation to show to you, because it's really not a real comprehensive idea. Right now, as I'm sure most of you are aware, town meeting really starts to dwindle in terms of membership as the night goes on. And we have had in recent years a lot of important votes take place after many members have left, which creates an issue because many town meeting goers who wish to vote on an issue can't stay late. They might be seniors and don't want to drive out too late at night. They might be parents and to get home for their kids. They might just need to wake up early the next day to get to work. So what this proposal would do is provide a way for town meeting to prioritize the most important votes, those taking more than a simple majority, for a time when most town meeting goers will be present. And if there's an issue that in some fashion needs more time, this proposal would in no way restrict that issue from having enough time, because the town meeting could vote by that 2/3 majority, to extend that time to allow that discussion. So it's more of a precaution, and it helps keep town meeting members interested and make sure that people feel that
it's not a very late night decision that is very important to the town, that only 30, 40, 50 people are there for, but rather every person who attends town meeting can have an opportunity to vote on. This idea was brought forward to us by Brian Tarbox, who is a community member, and he will soon be representing FinCom on the voter participation committee. Now, I had a conversation with Keith last week, I believe, about some of the other things we're working on, some of the charges you gave to us recently, but in the interest of time, I did want to keep that promise. That's all I have for you tonight, unless you have other questions.
Well, I guess my thought is that it could easily push things out into 2 nights, and then are people going to be there available the second night? So are you going to decrease voter participation by pushing something out to a Tuesday night? Mr. Moderator, how many times, every town meeting I've been to in the last 8 to 10 years I don't think we've gone 2 nights recently. Can you recall when we've gone to a second night? Right. And I think we come to that point a couple of times where we say, look, do we want to press on or do we want to go home? And it's usually overwhelmingly, I press on, I know.
Yeah. And I know the numbers do drop off, but I'd be interested to go back and look at some of the votes. I don't think the drop off is as significant as
And the thing that I see, I think what Alex said, one of these, maybe the sub-point of this, from what I heard from you, maybe to get us to rearrange so that everything comes up early, that anything that requires 2/3 is just scheduled earlier. Where we've also seen very simple articles that we expect to fly through end up taking a half hour. You see a $36 million budget go through in about 10 minutes, and then you see a wage table that increases the budget by $5,000, goes on for half an hour. So even if we schedule things to go earlier than 9:30, they could go later. And I understand at 2/3, you're going to say there's 2/3 to override this requirement, right? Yeah. So at that point, then, if we can override it, why do we need it? But Mr. Moderator, I don't know if you have any further response.
But just one thing, if 9:30 is set up as the witching hour, if you will, the magic time by which we will have to have started something or we can't finish it. I sort of fear that people will jockey for position. All it takes is a majority vote to take an article out of order. If someone sees the clock running down, you don't need a 2/3 vote to move your article up in the order. That doesn't happen because the order is not important, because we know we're just going to go from start to finish. But if
someone savvy with town meeting procedures knows they can start competing
someone thinks they got the votes and they want to get the vote tonight, or they think maybe they don't have the votes, maybe they want to let this thing go into overtime and go tomorrow,
Yeah.
I think it adds a layer of complexity that, maybe we don't need.
Okay. Mr. Pratt?
I think that the voter participation committee discussed this pretty thoroughly, and the members who were present seemed to agree pretty much unanimously that this was a good idea and that it would not create an obstacle, but rather an option for more participation. Keith, I remember we had a conversation about the ordering of the articles. This time around, if this does go on the warrant in November, it wouldn't come into effect until May anyway, which is why we were so interested in pushing it sooner, so that we have that voter participation aspect sooner rather than later. Keith, did you want
I did make a special point, though, in having town council review this warrant, this draft warrant. We've identified which articles require supermajorities, and that felt that was needed information to have. So you look at these articles that are before you and sort of get an idea of which ones would you need to finish by 8:30 or 9:30 rather, not push it up too much. And that, let's say more to the point, by the time you get to an annual town meeting, that if this were the rule, then you would probably want to restructure the order in which articles appear or when they're scheduled to be debated, so that, say at 9:30, when you only need a simple majority, you're taking up the town budget. And because that's what the rules say, but I'm not so sure if the town budget, which only requires simple majority for the millions of dollars that we're doing, maybe that is something you want to do when people are alert, or if they're when the crowd is the largest and you've got their attention most. Maybe arguably you want to have the budget voted at that point, even though it doesn't require a supermajority. But it's the sort of thing you'd have to look at when things are scheduled. I've not had a discussion with the moderator about it, but in just watching how some other towns do their town meetings, I know I was watching the debate on TV and at home in Concord when they were debating something. They had actually scheduled in advance. Now, they run many nights, for starters. And then they schedule in advance certain controversial matters will be at, 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever on particular days. But that's over a several day period where you have and there's a veteran of Concord town government and our fire chief. But that where we're a one-night operation, I think we may, it's sort of, the issue is, do you get more people by, let's say, stopping debate at 9:30 on day one and then go to day two? Where right now we get it all done in one day.
Yeah. Anything else? Right.
Just as a proponent.
Identify yourself, yeah.
Brian
Have you done before? I didn't know if you did earlier tonight. So.
Brian Harbaugh, Special Lane, and I'll say it. FinCom voted to appoint me to this board. I haven't been sworn in yet, so I'm in this sort of limbo. But as a proponent, I had originally planned to take this just as a citizen's petition, bypassing everyone, because I could easily get the 100 signatures to have done this. But I was sort of talked into, hey, there's this committee, for play by the rules. So I did that. So just saying, if I had done it the way I originally had planned to do it, no one would have gotten the chance to look at it. I think reordering, it's hard for me to understand that reordering would force us to go to a second night. And I'll just say anecdotally, it's anecdotally so you can take it for what it's worth, but I've over the last month or so, I've spoken to practically everyone I know in town about this idea, and every single person has said, oh my God, what a reasonable, of course idea. So this board putting it on in no way means that you support it. It's basically saying you created a committee to decide ways, to look at ways to increase participation. That board studied this, unanimously said we believe it would. It doesn't seem crazy to then let the voters decide.
No, I think a lot of things should go to the voters. I think, when you say studied, I don't know when you recommended this and how long it was studied. Are there, you can make your point about it. My other question leading into your point would, have you looked at other towns? How long did you study this? What other towns do this? Was this a one-night thing that you talked about this and brought it up, or was it, over several meetings and you did research to study it?
I know you're asking a very pointed question.
Yeah.
My thought about all of this is I heard Mr. Moderator say that, yep, around 9:30 people start dropping off. When one person leaves the room, that's one fewer people to vote. So bringing this to the townspeople to say, do you want this or not want this, to me, seems like a way to retain people at town meeting. And for them to not 1 or 2 or 6 or 12 people walk out, that's 12 fewer people participating in what we consider an important thing. The numbers as they play out now are a couple hundred people. To lose, 20 of them, that's 10% walking out the door. 10% is an important number. And I would advocate that this board insert this article into the...
But what about, you get the 30, you're worried about 12, but you don't worry about the other 3,200 that don't show up at all. So,
I don't think I said that.
No, what I'm saying is like, if you get 12 people even, you're considering those, the 12 or 20, and then you got 3,200 that aren't even showing up, It's, but anyway, go ahead.
I do want to speak to your question. We did discuss this at length from many different aspects for at least, I believe, 2, maybe 3 meetings, and then extensively with Keith, and he worked with town council. In the room, we have had a lot of people with different experiences in town government. We had a town clerk. Keith was there. He's worked with other towns, and this was something that we vetted. This was an idea that was vetted and that we think should be put before the voters. I will also say that I have yet to meet a person who wants to go to town meeting for more than one night every couple of months. And while there will be times here and there where maybe that is something we need to do. I don't think that this 9:30 proposition would lead to a major influx in the number of times we return to town meeting for a second night.
I think if I could.
Yeah.
No, I-
Go ahead.
I
Well,
think one of the points here is that we aren't asking, what this really amounts to is sort of rethinking how we present articles so that the articles that impact the taxpayer and the residents the most, which are generally the ones that are designated as 2/3 majority or more, are given their airing prior to 9:30. And if there is one that's not finished, the town meeting is certainly empowered to say, well, we need to finish this discussion, and they empower to continue with the discussion. So I don't see it as a major remake of how we do things. I think it's adjusting things with an eye to the gravity of the decisions we're making and the time and night that we approach them. And that's how I see it. And I think that when we're deciding things that are requiring borrowing, 2/3 majorities for zoning changes and stuff like that, the more people we have in attendance at the time makes it more reflective of what the town is. Granted, we have a long way to go to pack the house, and we will work towards that. But because we don't is not a reason to consider not putting this in here.
If I could,
Yeah.
Number one, the general idea I like a whole bunch, because there's nothing, even in meetings like this, when it comes 10 o'clock or 10:30, 11 o'clock, that you're making important decisions. I'm just not sure this is a way, or are there other ways? Because I've also thought about other ways of moving it up. Like I had, in my own mind, it seems like we have town meetings, and we might take a half hour to 45 minutes with reports by committees. If you start looking at the clock now, you're eating into that time, and someone might be worrying about 9:30. And does it actually cause more problems than it solves? Are people then going to be trying to move things up? Are they going to be speaking longer to delay things? I have an idea that so many other things could pop up in this, and it's not that I don't like the idea, because I agree with in the philosophy of the whole thing. So I'm just not sure this is the way to go, and maybe we should even look further.
Yeah, well, is there another way?
I was going to say, it's not my duty to call him.
Is there another way to do it? Is there a way to restructure or come up with some other article that says, 2/3 things that require 2/3 majority be taken before something takes, simple majority? My point is, I think that, it's the tradition that the budget goes first. I think that's really got to be taken first, taken early on in the meeting, and then, I don't know, I just wouldn't want to be doing something that's urgent in the budget. And if there's something as urgent as takes 2/3, it seems that people would stick around if it's that urgent, but,
One of the thoughts I had is, why couldn't we start, and I'm just jumping around now, why couldn't we start at 6:30 to get some of the other stuff done first, so when it comes time at 7 o'clock and 7:15, you're actually talking about all the, is that a way to go?
Yeah.
We're looking at a lot of things, but essentially what this does is ask the town, and in this case, the people who attend town meeting, to decide if they want to reprioritize how town meeting is done. And we'll have a good message from town meeting when we do this.
But an article prioritizing things would be more clear than a time limit. I mean, where do we come up with 9:30? Why isn't it 10:30? Why isn't it 10? Why isn't it 9? Why isn't it, something like that? If there were an article that said, 2/3 must be taken, anything that requires 2/3 vote shall be taken before, other items might be another way to do it, rather than putting a time limit on it. I guess I'm not convinced that it's not going to cause more problems, that it's not going to solve a problem that we may not have, and that it's not going to cause other problems. That's where I'm at. But go ahead.
Thank you, and I do want to address Mr. Knox's concerns. Firstly, there are a number of different things we've been looking at to increase voter participation at town meeting, and not just at town meeting, but tonight we're talking about town meeting. We're not ready to bring all of those ideas forward right now, and we definitely wanted to prioritize this because we felt this is something that can be done sooner and ought to be done sooner and ought to be put forward to the voters sooner. That said, there are other ideas we are looking at. It doesn't necessarily need to be an either-or situation. We have looked at different times for town meeting to be held. We haven't found a perfect time where everyone can be there. Of course, especially with an event as big as town meeting, you can't have one time that everyone can make. But we have looked into that issue, and I expect that we will in the future. I would also like to add that this doesn't create a barrier. 9:30 isn't a barrier. It's more of a safeguard. And because this proposal would allow for flexibility with a 2/3 majority vote to extend the 9:30 deadline, it really would allow for town meeting to take place in a much more ideal sort of way.
In your opinion?
In the opinion of the committee, unanimously.
Mr. Crystal, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Henry Crystal, L Lane. I'm on that committee, as you probably know, and I think in the committee's feeling was how nice it would be to know if we need to go to a second night, we could. And it would also end at 9:30, or there would be an option that it would. Littleton did have multi-night town meetings. I think we've had 3, gone as many as 3. And lots of towns around have more than one. So it's not a strange thing to have happen. So to me, if the voters knew we're going to go to town meeting at 6:30 or 6 or 7, I think earlier would be good. If the voters knew that, and they would be out at 9:30, and if necessary, won't miss anything, because tomorrow night we'll come back, and it will go till 9:30. And the 3,200, I'm glad you mentioned about the 3,200, because I have some ideas about that. Some of the other committee members do too. Someday we need to accommodate the other 3,200, and that's one of the things that's on our menu of things to try and do. And we're not getting there yet, but we're not going to give up on it. So anything we can do to show the voters that we really want them to come to town meeting, what Crown is trying is very beneficial. That's where I think a lot of us are coming from.
Mr. Coughlin.
Tom Coughlin, Coughlin Road. I've been going to town meetings for 42 years now, and my observation has been that it starts at 7 o'clock, that the folks are still coming in. So if we put the money articles, maybe Article 2, 3, 4, well, 4's taken up, but if we put the money articles early in the evening, I think it's common sense to me to do that. And I think it would be beneficial to all people involved. We don't get a great showing at town meetings anyway. And, we're talking 200 people that are making decisions for the whole town. It's ludicrous to me to let that happen, but that's what we have. And I just think it's common sense to have those articles, those money articles, early on the agenda. Thank you.
I don't disagree, and I think it's good to get and that's kind of what I was saying, find a mechanism to get 2/3 articles first. I just don't think this is it. If there's something other way to do it, I don't think just putting a time like that. Mr. Venuti.
Stephen Venuti, 164 Wickham Ave. I just want to remind the board, you control the warrant, you control the order that articles go on the warrant. If the board decides to put all the major money articles first, do that. You're accomplishing the same thing. You're listening to the concerns of your moderator who's sitting here saying, this may not work. That's all.
Mr. Simone.
Thank you, Chris Simone, Charles Ridge. Having heard both sides of this, listening to Alex Pratt, the reason I'm swayed in that direction is really squarely in thought of our senior citizens who today really are disenfranchised. The whole process is largely too late for them. And, on the blog ourlittleton.com, which I administer, there's a section we do some advertising for the Friends of the Council on Aging. And through that process and other conversations, some of these folks have said they don't even come because the big issues often happen way too late. And it's dangerous, and they're uncomfortable, and it's dark. And these are the citizens that have arguably the most wisdom, the most experience in this forum, and most impacted by these spending issues given their fixed income. And you know, I've heard the argument, well, geez, do you really want that? You have kids in the schools, whereas those folks may not, and they may not vote to support that. But you know what? They've got the wisdom and experience that we need present in the room. This would bring those folks back into the meeting if they knew there was a reason to be there, that they wouldn't miss these big votes and have to vote before they occur. And you know, as far as the point, how do you know? I mean, we'll know by trying it. You can always reverse that, but you know, this enfranchises seniors, and I'd ask you strongly to consider, you know, their presence and the value of it.
Alex?
I will also say that in addition to helping to enfranchise seniors, it also helps to enfranchise parents who have other commitments, and really anyone who has to get up early the next day or be home in time, you know, that evening by a certain hour. So it's not just seniors, but really the entire town, a whole swath of voters. And as one of the things that the voter participation committee has looked from its inception at is what groups of voters, what types of voters are having difficulty attending town meeting, which choose not to go, which have barriers to going. And we've found that seniors have issues going, and so we've looked at different ways, working with COA to increase their ability to go, whether it's transportation and now timing of the evening. We've looked at offering babysitting services for parents, and more notably their children. But we've looked at a lot of different solutions to this bigger problem that the selectmen and I think the town as a whole identified a couple of years ago, that not enough people are going to town meeting. And as Selectman Bronson said, when we have 200 voters in a room and 10 of them leave or 20 of them leave, that's it. 200 is already too small. When we start chipping away at that, it's really frightening. So that's why it's the opinion of this committee unanimously to urge the selectmen to put this before the voters so they can decide at town meeting in November.
Probably be easier just to schedule a 40B discussion at the end of each evening, and you'll have plenty of people there.
The other one would be the plowing, but the plowing every year. That turned them out. That turned them out. But, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's great that everyone shows up for the 2/3, but, you know, you get even to the end, and there's no one there. I mean, what are we doing to resolve people who stick around for the end? I mean, we're only trying to get people to stay around for 9:30.
We're not saying that we're going to adjourn town meeting at 9:30. We're saying that we're going to do the simple majority business, which is, you know, $30 million budget. Or which we are fortunate has not taken a lot of debate time at town meeting, but we work all winter to make sure that but we may get it wrong some year. We may not come to an agreement, or there may be operating, you know, parts of that multi-million-dollar budget that require longer discussion, and the rules would say that it would need to happen after 9:30 if we had zoning articles and other things happening before 9:30.
Well, as a parent and a husband who, you know, 2 nights for me is harder than 1 night. So, you know, again, I think the goal is to get things going earlier, and I just don't know if this is, get the 2/3 going earlier. I just don't know if this is the way to do it. Diane, what do you have to say?
Diane Corey, Town Clerk. Mr. Moderator. Chair.
Don't promote me yet.
Realistically, when I started to hear, because I am also on the committee, when I started to hear the suggestion of doing this, I was very concerned and said that I have a tough time getting volunteers for that first night. Now, if you're asking me to have a second night, it's going to be even tougher to get my volunteers. So it was explained to me that evening that, as Mr. Bergman stated, that we're not looking to close out our town meeting for the night at 9:30. We're just really looking to, once again, realign the way that the different articles are being presented to the townspeople. And the big money items are up front, which require the supermajority. I don't want to see it go into a second night for that reason. We also spoke about the fact that not going Tuesday night, but pushing it off to the following Monday, which was...
That doesn't, we've talked, yeah, I've heard that. It doesn't work because the school needs the gym during the week.
And also that the election happens in between, and all kinds of things happen. So, you know, I listened carefully to what they were explaining and the reason they were explaining it. And as Mr. Benuti said, it's your decision as to where the articles fall during the night as it is, when you're setting up the warrant. So, though initially I was against it, after listening to him, I said I would support it.
Can we put a placeholder and come up with some different wording to accomplish the same thing?
If I could, as a proponent, I mean, we lots of times adjust the wording between.
We have to cut this off in 5 minutes.
Okay, what I'm saying is, lots of times we have a placeholder, we can adjust the wording. I mean, we do that with our articles all the time.
Yeah.
So I think saying between now and town meeting, adjust the wording, sure, but it's just, give us a placeholder. I mean, if nothing else, I think it says to the town that we're taking you seriously and we're listening and we're endeavoring to make it easier for you to attend. So even if it does nothing but that, that's something.
I have no problem with the concept, I just am not sure that this wording accomplishes that concept. And if you want to come back, we can somehow put a placeholder in here and say, you can say, the 2/3 must be taken first, and, simple, budget and 2/3 must be taken first, and then everything else. I mean, we pretty much go that way anyway, but, just to, and like I said, I don't know if you want to reword it. I don't know what your thoughts are. I know you can't speak for the whole committee.
Sure. Speaking as one member, I think it would be a good idea to at least put a placeholder in so that we can have some action November 4th when we find some language that's more agreeable to both groups here. I would hesitate to put it off too long because it doesn't take effect until the following town meeting.
Yeah. No, I think.
And I know voter participation is a priority for everyone in the room. And so I'm glad that we've had this opportunity to discuss the issue, and I just don't want us to take too much time in acting on it. But you're right, we do need to figure out a way so that it doesn't create problems. And while it's the opinion of the committee that the problems, that the benefits outweigh the rewards, maybe your committee isn't there yet. Maybe the Board of Selectmen isn't there yet. We need to find some way to communicate that and to find language that's more amenable to each group.
Well, here I'm at where I don't think it's going to accomplish it. Does that mean I want to stop it from going to the town? No, I think everything should, that's before the town. I would just think that if you're trying to accomplish one thing, there's a different way to do it. So, Darrell.
Darrell Baker, Grist Mill. I guess there's an assumption that because it requires 2/3 vote, it's more important. There's a lot of things that we sit through a half-hour presentation and then you call for one vote to make it official. Why do we need to have that packed at the beginning of the meeting when we know it's going to be pretty much a pro forma vote because it's a non-controversial article? But our zoning our bylaws require it to be a supermajority thing. So this doesn't accomplish consuming large amounts of time for non-controversial articles during that early part of the meeting.
I mean, could it even be done with, the voter participation committee coming up and saying, hey, look, we've talked about this, here's an issue, we would like to make this recommendation to the selectmen that you order your articles in this way where it doesn't even have to amend the town code. You can just say, look, we're working for you, this is what we feel, would you take this under advisement? We've done the research, we recommend that, our research has shown that certain items should be taken first, and here's how we think they should be prioritized. Could even be done like that.
Yeah, we will have a practical opportunity to do that in the next week, only because the warrant for the November town meeting closes this Friday. The Board of Selectmen won't be meeting until a week from Monday, though, to determine the order of the articles. We're not meeting next Monday. So, just to take Ted's point, if once we see what all the articles are, and with an eye towards, managing the night, if there were suggestions that the committee had of what order the articles might be, so to better address some of the issues you have, without slavishly adhering to, when I looked at the draft warrant, I thought, gee, can we put all the supermajority articles first? Well, no, you can't, because we typically do some of the money articles right up front. Most of the money articles don't require two-thirds votes. They're simple majorities because they're
But
appropriations.
the $36 million budget really should be early.
Yeah, well,
You know,
it should be
yeah.
early. Yeah, it should be. It's only a simple majority, but it's, it's not so simple.
37.
So.
One of the things that I liked about this is the simplicity of it. We can sit here and craft something 4 pages long that tries to craft us through how we're going to prioritize town meeting. But this is very simple. This is very simple. Look, folks, let's get these types of articles out of the way first, and if we are stuck and we can't, town meeting, can decide to extend it. And and I think we're having a good discussion here. They're all valid points. But they're all pretty much contained because of this simplicity of this article. And we're putting it in the hands of the townspeople to say, well, yeah, we need to work on this, or not.
Oh, it is a very simple article, but it's cost at least a half hour. So, I mean, if we maybe weren't so simple and maybe more detailed or solve the problem in a better way, then it, maybe something different, something less simple or something more specific would be even better.
Well,
So,
if we're talking about getting the most important work done before 9:30, I think we might want to talk about dealing with a problem. Let's say you have 2 counted votes before 9:30, so you're going to spend half an hour. We're going to stand around looking at each other because we're going to be waiting for the counts.
And a half hour's quick.
half hour's a quick vote.
And that, yeah, and the half hour, so push, so we think we have between 7 and 9:30 to get the work done. Well, there's a chunk of time that you're going to take out, just because of the other bylaw that we have. So maybe that's, and I know we tried before to deal with the requirement for the counted vote.
So, are we at a place where we have a placeholder, the selectmen have a placeholder, and you come back with something else, or would you like to just write a memo to the board saying, based on our research, we recommend town meeting articles taken in this order? Some sort of generic, but specific, budget first, 2/3 first, things like that. Something like that as a recommendation, or are you set on amending town code? Because it just seems that there's a more efficient way to get this done.
Sure. So I think we could definitely move forward. I know it's just past 9:30 tonight. Moving forward with a placeholder tonight, and then I think the committee would be willing to work out. We've heard your concerns. Be willing to work out some language that would address your concerns, meet our concerns, and hopefully increase voter participation across the town.
Placeholder, and we may not need it if you decide to just write some sort of prioritizing memo, we can pull it out. But you see why we want to do these things early, we want to have this discussion before we're on the warrant, so that's why I was, when I originally started, it would have been, I know you just came up with this idea, which would have been nice to, to be able to have all this meeting, not be so rushed, because I hate having a placeholder and then pulling it off. It just looks like we couldn't get our stuff together in order to.
Well, let me offer an alternative, because
Well, I think Alex and I just said we're at a point where we have something. Do we want to go somewhere else? I mean, we've been talking for half an hour.
And I just wanted to add, if you came up with a recommendation for this board to adopt as policy, I would like to see this board adopt policy and not generally do it this way and kind of sometimes when it fits, do it that way. If it's going to be a policy, it needs to have teeth. And these sorts of wishy-washy ways that we sometimes apply things is not satisfactory to my mind.
Which is one of the reasons we were pushing for that as an article rather than just a general principle or general rule.
Yeah, okay. You still have something to add? Yes?
Yeah, the committee is posted tonight, and they are technically all here to make a decision, so I don't have to speak on all their behalf. But would the selectmen be willing to take the emphasis of what we're looking at here and try it? And then we go back and look and say, well, okay, this is how it can work, and this is how it might not work.
I'm not up for that. I'm up for what Alex and I were agreeing on, is that we leave a placeholder and they come up with something, maybe different wording, or, come back. You may come back and say, no, this is the wording that we think is best. So I think that's where the point that we got to, and to implement something that we have all these concerns about now, and not allowing the committee to go back and discuss our concerns would be detrimental to the committee, to the process.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
certainly try this town meeting and see what we can do with a 9:30 vote, while also working out language we need, and we could have that voted on at town meeting, while also using this town meeting as a sort of a trial run.
A worse scenario for me than having a warrant with things pulled is to do something and then redo it and then redo it. So let's see if we can come up with some other wording. If you don't come up with other wording, we'll put a placeholder in now. If you come up with other wording that accomplishes the same thing, we'll meet and we'll discuss it and take the recommendation. Yeah.
We're, for the warrant that gets posted, we'll have to have something, I mean, we can't, I don't think we could put in an article. Let's just see what amendments we'll make to the town code dealing with.
Voter participation prioritizing article. Voter participation prioritizing article. And that way there you come up with the language and amend that motion. Right.
Wouldn't
As a placeholder.
the placeholder just be the language we have now, since we're all, I mean, I think we all have good shared intentions to see if there's improvability, but the placeholder is what we have. And we'll all meet and try to do it.
When does the
Warrant closes Friday, so that, and you need to have we're amending the town code, so the article needs to be specific enough to warn the voters what the subject matter is, because ultimately amending the town code has to get approved by the Attorney General, and her office is going to want to see that the vote of town meeting, the motion made under there, is not that far away from what the article is as posted. So if you put in, so you have to basically put in some proposal to amend it to say something. And then when you're at town meeting, within the four corners of that article, you can, like if this article went in, you could probably change 9:30 to 10:30, but that's...
But if you're not amending town code, if they come back, at our next meeting and say, well, we want to change it so that we're going to order them in this, where it doesn't really change the town code, then it wouldn't be an issue, right? If this whole thing says, someone get on the town meeting floor and says, I wish to strike this in its entirety and replace with this, then it would, and it's not amended, something doesn't amend town code, would that work?
Well, it would, but then in order to carry that out, you pull this article. You put an article like this in the warrant, so you have a placeholder for town meeting. And then what you're suggesting is that the board may vote to pull this article in favor of some policy that you would adopt as the selectmen, rather than amending the town code.
So this is what happens when you do it at the last minute.
So you could do that.
But
you have to have some proposed bylaw to put in the warrant.
What's that?
If the idea had come to us in January, we would.
Yeah, I know.
And again, it may be a situation where if we go to May, what's the issue of going to May and then waiting for the next November? I mean, I don't see an issue with that.
But I thought it was a good suggestion, and not just because it was mine, but that if we'll know what the warrant looks like for November 4th, and we will have, there'll be a whole week when the committee can have a meeting and look at the articles that are there and make your considered judgment of what would be the order of articles that you think would best enhance voter participation. Simple.
So, and not carry this in?
And not have this, and you may or may not need to also have this bylaw in there, but...
So do a test run.
Do a test run of the policy change, with the policy change.
Assume that the policy's in place, what would the order of the articles look like?
And again, my concern is, the simple minority, the budget's, there's $37 million if that gets bumped out. I mean, those types of issues, we gotta do up front. That's gotta be first. The supermajority, if it goes to a vote and it's 45-minute vote, if there's a large turnout, what happens for two of them? It's an hour and a half. We're just sitting around waiting for that process to happen.
Then town meeting would make that decision.
Got it, I get that, but it's 9:30 now, and now everybody is leaving because it is late, and now we're gonna talk about a $37 million budget.
I don't think the voter participation committee is advocating pushing the budget after all of the supermajority votes, because it is a priority, and that's something we can work out in the placeholder.
What do you want to do, Alex?
What's that?
What do you want to do on this right now, as far as this right now?
Tonight, I think we should have a placeholder, and then we can work out the language.
So what we're hearing is the only placeholders we can have is what's here. When you leave here and you meet with the committee, are you planning on trying to say, oh, do we need to change this time, or do we need to change the suggestion, or?
I like the way Keith suggested it, you know, and a week we're gonna have a warrant. Have your group, have that group take a look at it. I mean, have you ever sat down and, has a group ever sat down and looked at a warrant to figure out how, you know, hey, if we had our way, how would these articles look to be able to get a better participation?
The way we've looked at those is, because one of the recommendations was the plain language approach.
Right.
So in that way, we review the articles and help Keith and others with creating plain language that anybody can understand.
And
But
that
we have
worked-
not looked at it
fantastic.
from an
Works
order
for me.
perspective.
Yeah, that worked fantastic, and that worked fantastic. But it didn't address the order of which the articles were shown. Right. It addressed what the articles were saying.
Right.
To convert it into layman's terms so everybody could understand it.
This bylaw proposal that the committee's offering is forcing us to make strategic decisions about placement of articles in order to cope with the two-thirds, with the supermajority requirement. Rather than debating that, why don't we look at what would the order of articles be of those that get inserted tonight to best achieve the goal of increasing voter participation? I don't know, it's a tall order, but
that's what we do
but
anyway.
that's our task, yeah.
When we order, when the selectmen order them, I mean, we're not trying to manipulate things, we're just trying, we put the
But
things.
what
you know,
we're offering is.
A second set of eyes.
Absolutely, you know, so
Or how many
give
people
us some
recommend
Your
feedback.
recommendation to the selectmen for the
Sure,
order.
sure.
Right now, it's usually just I make a recommendation to them, and, you know.
Most of the time we-
More the merrier, yeah.
So it's another 5 sets of eyes instead of a second set of eyes, or how many other people need to?
Instead of 4 eyes. so.
Yeah,
No.
so I'd say just let this warrant go through, and.
Without it.
Without it, and get the warrant to the voter participation group.
Yeah.
And, you know, look at it and say, you know what, this makes sense to have, I don't know, pick an article.
Yeah.
First because of X. And you know what, that supermajority article is gonna be a lot easier and non-controversial, make it later on at night. That type of thing.
I don't see any harm in having a placeholder and then removing that placeholder.
Yeah, it's not the desired, but if that's where we're
Well,
gonna be at.
the issue is having something that's close to the bylaw.
Yeah.
That's
But now we're not even talking about, there's some suggestions not even talking about bylaw. I don't know if you guys are stuck on, the only way to do it is to amend the bylaw. I don't know that. Or if you think, having a select, recommending a selectman policy to have you take a look at it, or have you give a generic prioritization, and then look at it and give a specific prioritization. I don't know, All I know is it's 9:30 and I'm tired.
Yeah, the discussion is going on quite a ways here, and I guess what I could do is poll the committee and see which way they want to go, because they are here and they are posted.
Are they open? You in session?
No?
I mean, can you decide that in 5 minutes? Or are you guys gonna need a full meeting?
Again, I don't see the harm, if it doesn't make this, we have one in May. I don't see the harm.
I just think I think there's some valid points here, and if we can take those valid points in another way without amending town code, which could have, in a way that could have other repercussions, negative repercussions, that would be more desirable to me. I see some nodding heads out there. Anybody want to add any in?
Yeah, thank you.
I didn't see your head nodding, though.
I mean, could we put the article in the warrant as it is written, and then we can talk about it for the next 6 weeks, and remove it if in fact we have talked out of the fact this is maybe not a good decision? And put it in as written.
What's the sense of having it in, we can, let, again, I'll refer back to Keith's idea, because I thought it was a good one. Get the full warrant vetted, done, give it to voter participation, and let them say, what is it really we want to change?
That's what I say. So I say, just leave it out, and if it has to, get into the May. Once they get this warrant for this meeting, discuss it, come back with either different language or make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen on the way the warrant looks.
All right, board, is that a motion?
I'll make it a motion.
What's the motion?
The motion is not to have the Article 14 as written. And to give the, have this warrant.
The motion would be not to place it on the
Correct.
warrant.
That's all.
With the intent of working with the voter participation committee of finding another way to resolve the issue.
Absolutely.
I can't second it.
I can't either,
I want.
I'll second.
Because I don't believe in
Oh.
his motion.
Oh, procedurally I can't.
Procedurally, you can't.
Okay.
Ethically, I can't.
All right.
Motion been made and seconded to not include Article 14 on the, Article 14 as written, this is a bylaw amendment for the supermajority votes onto the November 4th, 2013 special town meeting. Should I end with it? Well, that's the motion, yeah. Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. I want to resolve the issue that you guys have identified, though.
Thank you.
I just think there's a way to do it without some negative concerns, and, like I said, I think this got rushed, and I think we can find a better way to do it if we take a little time. Okay. Article 15, bylaw amendment, manner of authorizing indebtedness. Keith, you can take this one.
Yeah,
I'm
the
gonna
Board of
do that.
Selectmen actually voted on June 10th at a joint meeting with FinCom and the moderator to make a change to the language regarding authorizing indebtedness to essentially fully legalize the long practice of having a single vote cast when it's a unanimous decision on a borrowing article. So this is an issue that had come up, that bond counsel had raised, and the solution is to make a slight amendment to our existing bylaw, and you've voted your intent previously to insert the article on the warrant.
Looks good.
Okay, proposed Article 16, bylaw amendment fees. Back in 2003, town meeting accepted the Chapter 40, Section 22F, which allows boards and departments that issue permits to set the fees for those permits. And a couple of years ago, we went back and amended the town code to take out some building permit fees and other things that were still left in the bylaw. That since now the procedure is the building commissioner adopts them and they're brought here to be subject to your approval. We've had town council go through the town code. There are 2 remaining sections which still refer to fees. The fees can be set by the agencies that issue the license, and so we're suggesting we remove those last remnants of specific fee mentions in the town code, so that we don't have, right now we have inconsistent language. The Conservation Commission has adopted a different fee structure. You've approved it under 4022F. However, the bylaw still has the old fee structure in there, so we want to take it out.
All right, sounds good. Any discussions? Okay, Article 16, borrowing article for Littleton Common Sewer, smart sewering preliminary design. As a member of the committee, I can talk a little bit about this one. This is an article to see if the town will continue the smart sewering feasibility study by going to what's called a preliminary design, which is actually just an extension of the feasibility, but for industry reasons it has to call the preliminary design report. The borrowing sum is $588,000. I will mention that the the Sewer Feasibility Study Committee did meet tonight and unanimously recommended this article being put on the warrant. There has been some thoughts on funding sources brought up, and talking to Bonnie today, from what I understood is this would not even impact 2014, but basically this would be brought into 2015, and it would occupy a place on the 2015 budget before we even know where we're at for the 2015 budget. So with that, Bonnie, I can turn over to you or Keith, whoever wants to continue my layman's terms and bring it up to speed.
Yeah, the issues that we wanted to bring forward on two proposed or potential borrowing articles. We're certainly aware that the Sewer Study Committee was going to be making a recommendation to bring its borrowing article back. And we're also aware that there's a similar price tag on the fire station design project. And so potentially we could be facing about $1.2 million in borrowing at a fall special town meeting if both of those projects were to be brought forward. So what I asked Bonnie to do in response to some questions we were getting in general about what the town's debt policy was, how we can take on additional debt, what financial policies pertain to major capital projects, that Bonnie put together a very extensive memo which we distributed to the Selectmen and Finance Committee members last week, which would essentially point out that our policy, the financial policy as adopted in 2010 by this board and the Finance Committee, says that major capital projects will be sought by debt exclusion. And you have to actually read a little further beyond that, because the policy itself does not differentiate between design and construction. So we went and looked back at, well, what's been our practice in handling major major projects? And our practice has been that in most cases, that even the design portion of a major construction project, which is either a new facility or a major rehab of an existing one, that even for the design that we would get a debt exclusion. And I'll use the police station as an example. We knew that we could only afford to undertake a new police station for $6 million if we had a debt exclusion. Same is true of a major rehab for a fire station. In the case of the police station, the Russell Street school rehab project, both of those for $300,000 and $500,000 respectively, we got debt exclusions for the design, and that's how we paid for them. And in the case of, and just strategically, in the case of the police department, I for one think that it was an immensely more powerful argument when you're asking for $6 million to be able to say, well, we're asking you to fund this, voters, because, and we've already asked you before if you believed enough in the project to give us the design money, which we did get approval from both the town meeting vote and the ballot for debt exclusion. So with respect to the say $600,000 that we see would be needed for the fire station design, you have a strong recommendation from administration and finance that project needs to wait for the Springtown meeting for several reasons. One is that the debt exclusion requires a ballot. And we don't have any elections scheduled now. And while we had a special election a year ago for the track debt exclusion, I think that was a special case because we'd actually committed to the school committee we would do that. And that was the price of letting that project be delayed by half a year, with the promise that we would do a ballot question, and we had a special election. In this case, unless you want to do that again, I'd say it's something that can certainly wait. And frankly, I think that the project, in order to be as successful as we want it to be, will need to be vetted more. And I felt more strongly about that after attending last week's planning board meeting, where there were some concerns voiced by some of the abutters and neighbors about what site selection process did we go through. And we need to, it's been a while since we've done it, and we know there are going to be questions about that, but we can address those, and we can make sure that we're ready when it goes forward in May. It's still a priority project. It's not anything that's falling off the priority list, but it needs to be brought forward in due course. The other reason for that is because the question I asked Bonnie is, let's say we just, don't get into details about what the financial impact is, and you vote to put articles on the warrant, and then on town meeting floor or the day after, we say, okay, hey, we're doing this fire station design. How are you going to pay for it? Mm-hmm. And so we better make sure everyone has the answer now. Before you do it, so you'll know. And the answer of how you pay for the fire station design, if you don't do a debt exclusion, the answer is that you take $130,000 a year for 5 years off the top of the $1 million that we have.
Of the capital plan.
Yeah.
Or we make a decision to say, we spend $1 million a year on capital equipment. And we think outside the box.
Yeah.
And we say, we've been doing $1 million for X amount of years, there's a lot of new equipment in town.
Yeah.
Why can't we ask the town to designate a portion of that $1 million to these studies, so we don't have to go up for debt exclusion? Because I'm not 100% sold on debt exclusion.
Right. Yeah, you can, and I don't disagree with that approach at all. What I would say, though, is we don't have enough information tonight to make that decision, and that it's absolutely, and that would be a great thing for us to work on between now and annual town meeting, because what we would need to have is, let's see what all the freshly renewed requests of all the departments are. What do they need? We just, we're coming up with $120,000 out of the ether because we have a problem that was identified for the radios that we just have to fix. Okay, so that's $120,000 that we don't have for something else.
But there's money designated for that.
But,
and
yeah.
if I may, one more suggestion is, let's take a look at the sewer feasibility study to continue that the same way. It doesn't mean we have to go debt exclusion every time. Have we done that in the past? Yes. Do we have to in the future? Yes, it may be. But if we skip a year with capital equipment, which is about 1.1 million or thereabouts.
And growing every year.
Can we take a look and ask the townspeople to say, look, here's two good studies that, from my point of view, will benefit the town. And we don't need to borrow any money. We need to redirect money. So that would be my
It's sort of a twofold process, and the track is probably a good example for what you're saying here. Step one was we followed the rules, and again, the policy on debt exclusion is not only our compact with ourselves, it's our deal with Standard & Poor's, because they know that we don't have the money that if we forego. If we don't follow our policies and we forego expenses, that in the long term it's going to come back to haunt us later. But I think the track is a great example, because there we did the debt exclusion. Point one, follow the policy, and then point two, we found in that case one-time revenues, the years that year's worth of snow and ice money we didn't need, where we could apply those directly to reduce the property tax impact. So the impact on the voters was less. We were mindful of their pocketbooks, but we were also consistent with the policy. We could do the same sort of multi-task approach too, of once we have all the information. I'd argue strongly that we don't have enough information on the ripple effects of those decisions now, but that we could certainly have a coordinated spending plan that ready for May town meeting that, you know, addresses the policy concerns that we'll have to answer for with the bond rating agencies, but also reduces what the impact would be on the taxpayer to the extent that we can. And in some and you know, and it's, we know, but there's no getting around the fact that when it comes time to pay $6 million for the construction, that's a given. You only do that.
That's a
with
whole
that.
discussion for another day.
So it's like, how do we address the smaller amount of money, and is there a spending plan to do that? And, you know, that's a, you know, a three-pipe problem.
Did you wanna add something?
My concern would just be in trying to scrape together, you know, funding to do the design feasibility study, whatever you want to call it. If we were able to do that and without an override vote or debt exclusion vote at a town meeting where there's 200 and, you know, some odd people there, and then to go to a ballot question for the $6 million construction, if you don't have the support of the full complement of residents, I would consider that a failure. Not that it wouldn't happen, I mean, it would happen, but there's always that possibility. You fund the design and then the project doesn't go forward on a vote of the ballot.
So go either way, whether we do it, no matter how it gets funded,
Right.
that can happen.
So what I'm hearing, Keith's been saying fire station, but it seems to hold true for the feasibility study too, for the
Right,
sewer.
because we're
is-
dealing
and what I'm
with-
hearing from
Yeah,
Jim,
whether it's 600,000 or 1.2 million, it's still money that is a significant, which would need to be managed. Is there a way to do it? Well, you know, we can work on it, but we can't. We don't have the answer for tonight. And just on the sewer, since we started there, and I jumped to the fire station, but they're so joined at the hip because they're both, you know, over $500,000 for design funds. In the case of the sewer, we know under our own policy that when it comes time to construct a sewer, that will not be subject to a debt exclusion because it would be paid by sewer users. Just as multi-million-dollar water projects do not get subject to debt exclusion because they're not paid by property tax, they're paid by water users. So just, we know that that's the case, that the policy could be consistent with that. However, until we get to the point where we have sewer users, then we have the conundrum of who pays for it. And that's why with the question posed to Bonnie of what's the funding strategy, let's say that in the case of the sewer, we have a borrowing authority for $600,000, what's the plan to pay for that, which is why we...
5 years. The most you can borrow for design services when you don't have a plan yet for construction is 5 years. So I have to build that 5-year plan into the budget.
So let me try to put everything together that I'm hearing. Is we don't really have sound financial policy to pay for it now, to vote for it now. And what I'm hearing from Jim is that, you know, we want to look at these two, we want to consider them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a debt exclusion, but we can address whether it's going to be a debt exclusion or cap plan in May, and put both of these on the back burner until May, when we can plan, when we can count on it, because the 2015 budget is not ready yet.
Right.
And we can't, so we'd be over-committing part of that budget before we even know what we need. So we're going to be taking out a chunk, and we're going to start looking at 2015 budget, and here's something that we got to take.
And to that point, if we go before a town meeting to say, here's our funding strategies,
Yeah.
have those answers before the town, so that they can make a educated decision as to whether or not they want to spend existing funds, hopefully, and not go to a debt exclusion to fund either both or none.
Coming from the sewer feasibility study committee, I think the members will be disappointed. I think they voted tonight that they wanted to go. You know, I'm disappointed because, you know, obviously, I want to get the information out. I want to see what the town has to say. But the other thing that we're looking at also is we're meeting with the owners in October. And I spoke with Keith, who's going to help get in touch. I've tried to contact the owner of the property for IBM, and I think my email just gets caught in the spam. So we're going to be looking to them, and when we meet with the property owners on October 5th, we're going to start saying, you know, are you committed to this? Do you need it? Do you really want it? And if you are, then, you know, basically put your money where your mouth is. Then, you know, chip in for this study. If it's so important to you, you know, why don't we chip in? So this 588, could come down considerably. If, you think about it, if you just get an average of 1,000 from those people, it's, $100,000, $90,000.
There's a lot of precedent for finding a way for the affected property owners to become financial stakeholders in it as well.
Right.
That I haven't had a lot of discussions with property owners, but informally with a few. The idea that since they are the ones who benefit economically if you have a sewer, that they alone would have additional opportunities for their property if there were a sewer. Then rather than have the town be the risk taker all by ourselves. And we hear that that's an issue of concern to the property taxpayers who are not in the sewer district. That really requires us, I think, to go to the property owners as a group and individually and see what sort of financial commitment can we get. There are ways to do it too. There are plenty of towns, both the towns that Bonnie and I have worked for before have had ways where the money that you receive is ultimately credited to that property's account. If you do a sewer, then it goes towards their betterment. If you don't do it, then it was used as a portion for the design. But if it's like you have to spend money to make money, and it's those property owners that would be in a particular position to get the most benefit out of the sewer if it happened.
Well, I think it also would sound better on town meeting floor if you have property owners there saying, look, we really need this, we need it so bad that we've invested.
And we'll pay for it.
So, I guess, been leading a horse to water here, and my thought is that for the board members who have spoken, is to not include these on the warrant. Is that where we're at?
I would say.
Are you going to hear from the public during this program?
In a minute, am I?
There's one thing that has me concerned, and you and I have talked about this in the past, is that no matter how you feel about the sewer project, the people that have done that work in that committee have been there a long time. Will it be a burnout type of thing? I think it's the way we have to go, but I think it's unfortunate for that committee who spent so much time that they have to wait another 6 months, and are you going to lose somebody?
Well, yeah, we're probably going to lose a few people, but I think once. I don't know if it's going to help medicine go down easier, but understanding that it may get better. And we've talked about that, about how if we can get that number down, will it make it go better? If we get the commitment, if people are actually showing commitment, it may make it go easier. I think it's that ramping up for November 4th and then having that get kind of pulled away from them. It's really the selectmen saying, yeah, we want to support you, but we really can't do it until May. It's really what if we pull this, that's what we're going to be saying.
I'm a little bit confused as to why you're saying that we couldn't support this for a vote on November 4th. It seems to me that the committee has come forward with a unanimous vote to have it move forward, have the townspeople decide on it. We townspeople were asked in part about this back in May, and then that got withdrawn. And I have heard concerns from at least one member of the committee saying that if this doesn't go through in May, a lot of the good momentum that has been developed is going to fizzle out, and it's going to not, you're going to lose people, they're going to lose the momentum. And that committee member represented to me that going forward on this was really important, and I think tonight's vote by the committee reflects that. It seems to me that people want to go forward. I guess I'm confused as to what the
how are you going to pay for it?
reluctancy
How are you going to pay for
is with the debt exclusion.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is
but
how
the-
we've
it's too
always
late.
done.
Yeah, but
A debt exclusion, do you understand that the debt exclusion, you understand debt exclusion also requires a ballot, that the ballot wouldn't be able to be taken until May anyway. So why not pull them both at the same time?
Because the committee itself
Well,
said they wanted to.
but that's the answer, though, that if it's, the momentum has to last until the May election.
Sure.
And that and for all the work that frankly needs to get done with the property owners, that to convince ourselves that that the sewer project actually has supporters, who, along with the committee, would stand at the town meeting and say, I need this, I want this, I will pay for this. That's the dynamic that needs to take place. That's what I've seen in a successful sewer project in Bonnie too. And that and that's ought to be the mission of what you work for. If you want the project to succeed, then you have to put together that strategy for success, which is explaining it to those who are most directly affected, get their financial commitment to it, and then have the effort to bring it forward at a Monday followed by a Saturday, as opposed to a November followed by a May.
Sure. And I guess my only question, sort of the cynic in me would say, well, they've been in existence for 3 years, why haven't those conversations happened?
They're not authorized under your policy to ask people for money without a signal. I mean, not that we haven't thought of it or had the idea, but I think what it would call for is a clear expression from the board that it would be, we're not allowed to approach property owners and people and ask for money without your approval. So I think that that's your policy, and we don't do it because we used to get in trouble when people did that. If the strategy is to make a concerted effort on the part of the committee and the administration to contact the property owners and to get a financial commitment, we know how to do that. I mean, there are set processes in place that you do it, and that we've done in other towns, and there are very business-like ways to approach that issue, and that needs to be part of the task that we're given.
And have the business owners been precluded from approaching the town and saying, I'd like to financially back this?
No.
Mr. Chairman, does the board have anything else? Alex, did you have spoken yet?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this whole strategy about, whether we continue with capital projects like this being a debt exclusion and having all components of it be part of the debt exclusion. And one of the things I like about that is it sort of connects the dots for us. And the townspeople are understanding what they're getting into. What I don't want to see us get into is this imaginative and I'll just use that one word, methodology for coming up with various pools of money to come in this, and the townspeople aren't seeing the connection that in the end, and I don't think it's funny.
I specifically said the capital equipment.
But this is, both of these are capital.
1.1 million, and all I'm saying is, we've been going up on taxes a lot. If we can do something without going up on taxes, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's all I was saying.
That's true.
So it's not imaginary, I'm not imagining anything, it's fact.
So,
I'm
go ahead.
using imaginative methods or creative methods
Okay.
of funding, okay? Sometimes it makes a deal too good to be true. And I think back to the first sewer issue, and there was much approach like that, and there were strings attached. What the short of what I'm trying to say is, if we get into a bunch of different funding mechanisms and we end up with strings attached, and we're pretty much stuck and going in a certain direction. I want to keep things out in the open as much as possible, because in the end, the fire station, the sewer project, anything else that may come along, in the end, the taxpayer is going to be on the hook for this. Whether you want to fund it by other mechanisms or not, if something goes wrong, and it belongs to us, the title on the door is going to be Town of Littleton, sewer, whatever, or fire station, whatever. And I like the connection of the townspeople saying, in numbers, which is what the debt exclusion does, say, yes, we want to continue this project, or no, we don't. And when you do it that way, then instead of 200 people deciding, everybody comes to the polls and decides whether they want a project. And
So are you for May? Is that what you're saying? Not putting this on now, putting it on for May, and whether, it seems, if you're pushing for debt exclusion, that seems to be the way to go, because then you have, like you say, you have town meeting and vote, town meeting and ballot, so.
I'm for every piece and component of these being subject to approval of the greater number of townspeople.
Which would be May.
But it could be whenever, if we wanted to do it now and call a special election to do it, It's bringing the townspeople to the
Yeah,
vote.
I just think it's no special elections, just, you're not gonna get as many as you do for a town
Well-
election. But,
At this point, May is probably the best answer.
Yes.
I
It's
don't-
late, huh?
I know, it is late. But we want,
I-
today, we still have other stuff to go.
Again, the only reason why I'm thinking it should happen now is because I was specifically asked to consider the committee's energy level and being able to keep up. And I heard what Keith
Yeah.
said, I understand, I do,
So
but
what are your thoughts then?
I think it should be put before the people.
For 588 rather than reduce it? How are we gonna pay for it at 588? How would you suggest paying for it at 588?
With the debt exclusion, again, with the debt exclusion. And you can have from November to May to do more education and reach out to business owners if that's something you want to do, and then bring it,
Only if the debt exclusion passes.
correct? Yeah.
Mr. Coughlin?
Tom Coughlin Road. We've been dealing with this issue for 3 years now. They've spent $185,000. I think you should bring it forward in November. I'm waiting for your decision for whether you're gonna pull it or not. But I don't think it's fair to the townspeople. I mean, we have spent an awful lot of time in this issue and spent a lot of money. And so I would vote for bring it forward right now.
How would you recommend paying for it?
Debt exclusion. And we could move that up. I mean, does it have to be in May?
No.
No, you can,
In November.
excuse me. The debt exclusion can be voted on at any time, but then it needs to be followed by a ballot vote. So we either have to call a special election, or if we do it in May, then you have the election immediately thereafter.
I'm for spending the money now, doing the special election right now.
Okay. Ms. Harwick?
There's a fiscal aspect to this, and there's also voter participation. And I think the notion that we should embark on a major town effort so that we don't have some committee members want to leave the committee. I recognize the effort that volunteerism takes, as we're all sitting here at 10:30, but the fact, I don't want to spend $500,000 and maybe start sewering the town so that we keep some members on the committee. I think that's not the issue. I think the issue is money and voter participation. And even if we had money sitting in a pot of gold here that we could spend right now, I would still say 200 people don't get to decide, either major, a new fire station or the new sewering, major commitments by the town. 200 people can't make that decision. If we're going to say we want a ballot, then why separate it? You make the town meeting vote of 200 people is meaningless at that point, I think. At FinCon, we talked about this the other day of having a ballot. We would talk about proposing a policy change that said, regardless of whether it was debt exclusion or maybe you got money from capital stabilization fund, that any money over $500,000 had to go to a ballot. So I'd say, pull it, let's do it with the full town's vote. Thank you.
So you put the budget, the 37 million to town vote too, on a ballot question? Because that's.
Let's not.
You don't want me to answer that?
That's not good. All right, Mr. Samo, taking into consideration what's been said, if you have anything new to say, you go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I do have a few points. I hope you'll have the courage to let me finish them. I'll be as brief as I can. One is that, I think it's unfortunate that we've coupled together a project that the fire chief has demonstrated as necessary with this project, and now it's being muddled from moving forward because of this project. And to the point that Mr. Coughlin made, for 2.5 years or more, this committee and countless nights, and other committees on countless nights, have dealt and talked about this instead of other higher priorities, that the will and the well-being and the good of the townspeople are not being met because we're so distracted by this issue. $185,000 has been spent. 85,000 from our funds, 100,000 from outside funds, and now we've learned there's another 45,000 on top of that from outside of Littleton. influences on this process.
No, wait a minute, I can't let you finish when you start saying things like that. You know where the $45,000 came from.
No, we don't.
And we knew, yes, we do, it came from CRWA, Working Kind, and it's not something that we just learned, that's something that the committee has known all along. You just learned it a week and a half ago, and and so you will be allowed to continue to speak as long as you don't make statements such as that,
Okay.
inflammatory statements.
Well, thank you for though clarifying the fact that 145,000 has come from outside of Littleton. Okay, now, we've been dealing with this for a long time. The people decide, are, determined here, we like to vote. It's been before the townspeople for a long time, let them vote. I mean, you clearly, again, as you did in May, and you won't like this, Selectman Doucette, but you're running away from defeat again. You know you don't have the votes, you're doing everything you can to avoid a vote, you're doing everything you can to avoid letting the town vote on this issue which impacts them, and to the town administrator's point that a debt exclusion won't be required because it's paid for by users. This project is underwritten by debt that we need to go ahead and get. In Chapter 44, under Massachusetts law, we as the residents of this town will ultimately be responsible for the repayment of that debt, regardless of the business model, which one of the committee members at the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study Committee, just in the last meeting, or a couple meetings ago on the 3rd, she herself referred to it as theoretical. And Mr. Zimmerman, sitting in the back, said he thinks it's 80% chance it'll be successful as the recognized paid consultant on this project. So it's theoretical that the users may pay for it. Again, the town has been studying this issue. It's time to get the broadest vote possible as an indication moving forward. Even if you defer the ballot till May, which you don't need to, and you know you don't need to, we could bring the ballot forward to May and couple the ballot with the town meeting vote, or we could decouple and have November and May. But let the people be heard on this. Let the people on Taylor Street tell you whether or not they think this is a good idea to risk their funds. And the people on Foster Street, and the people on Beaverbrook, and all other corners of this town who may or may not be a business owner. But now you're telling us you need this many more months to go off and sell the business owners and see if you can't find some more support. You've had 2.5 years. You've lost. Come forward to town meeting and let the town vote. You ran from it in May, you're running from it again.
You're twisting words, and you're making inflammatory statements that you are done speaking, and I'm not even going to acknowledge your
But if you
inflammatory
accuse
statements.
me of
No, you're
lying,
done, Mr. Simone.
If you accuse me of lying, you need to cite what it is that I've said that's not true.
Let's carry on.
Okay.
I only ask that if you
I
want to
only
say
ask that you follow the open meeting law and speak only when acknowledged by the chair.
But you just
Where's
said
the
I-
board? Where's the board? What's the board's decision? Or does anybody else want to speak to this?
Just briefly, thank you. I'm really wondering why we are decoupling the engineering and the construction as part of the borrowing. Why are we making that precedent right now? Why should we do it? To me, it's really dangerous business. We have habitually used the debt exclusion. We have never distinguished between engineering and construction. So I'm thinking, why should we ever do that? What's the point? What purpose?
I think it's very consistent with what we do because we're not doing, well, it's called an engineering design report, preliminary design report, and obviously which takes engineering, and as I stated before, that's what the industry is. That's what the industry process is, but it's actually just a feasibility, it's a continuation of the feasibility study. And I believe that is, any feasibility study like this does get, you don't go right to design. Didn't we do it at the high school or with every building that we've built? Haven't we? You go with your feasibility first?
For the $500,000 for Russell Street, that included the feasibility and the design in one fell swoop. So, and for which we did get a debt exclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, you need separate votes. I'm not sure if that was part of Henry's question or not, about what the
I guess I'm
decoupling
wondering
is. You need a design vote first to design it. My humble opinion, that you don't want to get a design and construction vote in one fell swoop. The way we've always done business is you do design first, get it designed, get your bid recommendations, and then you bring the main event, the construction, for second vote at town meeting. And what we're saying is under our policies recently for major projects, we've required debt exclusions for both the design and the construction votes. So,
Do we have a consensus or do we need to vote it?
I don't know that we have a consensus, but You know, I've listened to several arguments here, and I think Tom Coughlin's argument is a very powerful argument. When you look back, we've put off this vote once already, and now we're putting it off again. So we're essentially delaying it a year. And I agree. I think maybe the fire chief sort of caught in the crossfire here. I was originally thinking that where we ought to be is wait till May. But you know what? I don't think that anymore. I think we should ask the townspeople if they want part of this project, and we should do it by debt exclusion and let it go to the ballot and figure out what they want to do. I think we're at that stage.
So you're ready to spend $588,000 of the town's money without determining whether or not we can reduce that amount by having some of the property owners chip in? Or reduce it to, by half or nothing?
I think that is a claim that's not true. Because if in the process of doing this, just like we did with the track, that if money became available, if alternative means became available, and the townspeople had already voted their wish that they wanted a track, and in this case, if the townspeople voted that they wanted to continue the sewer feasibility study, and we found a way to finance it, then we can apply that. We don't have to say, well, we don't want it now because you have to raise $500,000. No, we want to find out what the townspeople want. And we have enough information for them to say, proceed or don't proceed.
Do you think the town's opinion would be changed if this $588,000 was reduced? And, maybe in May, if it were, under $500,000, then it could meet the policy and go under capital plan. And, if we're maybe $300,000, that would change.
Go back to the track. The town.
No, wait, I'm asking, but do you think if we can reduce this amount, that it would have a better chance? And don't you think that's our,
Well, you're not reducing anything, because in the end, we're going to spend however many million, or at least we're going to float the bond for it. And so I just think it's time. I think it's time that we put it up there, and if they want the project, and if they said, well, geez, find some more ways to do it, we already know we've been resourceful in that way, because we did it for the track most recently. So let's put it out there, let's let them decide, and let's let them decide in the numbers.
On both of these? That's what you're saying? So both of them?
I'm talking about the sewer project right now.
What about the fire station?
I think the fire station, I think that Keith brought up an important point. There was a lot of new concerns that were raised by residents. It's not a project that's 3 or 4 years old in its work. And I think that the thought of waiting for that one has merit. But I don't think the sewer one has merit for waiting.
Reducing the cost to the townspeople.
I think both of them have more work to do, that you could make good use of the time between now and May. I think they have that in common.
But one of the things that
looking at this
happened
financially, from the way, putting on my financial hat and proper financial spending, what I heard from Bonnie and Keith is that there's just, the proper way to fund this is, we can't spend 2015 money now, and we should be doing a, vote and debt exclusion in May.
Yeah, because these projects are in competition with all the other spending that we do, and in fairness to ourselves, I think we need to look at what that plan is, and the departments will be making their requests, starting their requests in the coming months. We don't have what the whole picture looks like for fiscal 2015 yet.
May, I'm saying May.
I'd like to see it happen, whatever.
Both are just the sewer.
The sewer, and in part because I see the sewer and the fire station as two separate issues.
They are separate.
Yeah.
Yes, I do see that. Let me make the differentiating point, however. The difference is a capital improvement of a fire station feels very different to me as a resident than a preliminary design report for a sewer that will eventually be funded by businesses. To me, that should not be deemed a capital improvement. No capital money should go to that. It seems to me it's not in keeping with what truly is a capital improvement to our town. I see it as a business a business improvement, a business zone improvement, which is much different because it's based on the service of property owners who own, privately owned buildings like that. So I see it as different.
And one other point is, and I sent you an email a while back, Ted, about this. I said, what more do we have to discover as far as your work as a committee? And your answer was nothing. We just need to go to town meeting, or something to that effect. But the answer was nothing. You really had little left to do. So we're
As far as
ready.
technical,
The
no, you asked if
difference
the
be-
technical portion was done. You asked the technical portion was done, right? I said, yes, basically the technical portion.
Well,
I
all
said
your
technical
work
portion
up
was done.
until the point where you appropriated where you had to have more money to do more work.
Yeah.
Okay, and you said you were essentially done. All right, you're essentially done, let's vote. Fire station is not in the same position. Fire station, there's some things have been identified that the chief needs to work on and everybody needs to work on. That's not essentially done. But your level in the committee for sewering, you are at a point where now you need an infusion of more money to continue. You have nothing more to offer, so why are we delaying?
Because we may be able to make it more financially viable, more financially pleasing to the town. And putting on my selectman hat on top, over my sewer committee hat, one of my top priorities has always been the proper finances of the town. And if we can reduce this, and if we can do it without spending 2015 and do it outside of the levy limit, because I do it inside the levy limit, because that's my preference, is to always do things without an override. And if we can do it like that, then we have a chance.
Other
Then
than
that should be done.
outside sources of revenue, people who agree that they want in on this project, then you're taking it, it's just a matter of where and how we take the money, but we're still taking the money that's coming out of the pockets of the taxpayers. So unless somebody comes along and says, we're IBM, we'll fund the whole thing for you, you're good to go, then it's a matter of balancing what our priorities are within the money we have, unless we raise and appropriate through debt exclusion more.
So you want to vote it rather than paying for it. So why would IBM come and say, oh, the town already funded it, why do I have to put in for it?
Well, could we put in the phrase up to, borrow the sum of up to $588,000? And if you find contributions from the businesses who want to buy into it, then you found money. And we know that that's our maximum exposure as a town.
Of course you can.
Okay, so we should do that and let them vote. Because you might get no's. You might say, 100 businesses might say no.
Well, but the no's are instructive, frankly, and and we have not formally asked the affected property owners if they will make a financial contribution. And now it's basically, it's put up, it's time to show that evidence of your support, because that's important information for us to have, to ask the property taxpayers to cover the short-term costs.
And I think the property...
And that's information we absolutely will not know by November 4th, but we have every expectation to know definitively by May town meeting whether there is that support or not. And I think that information would be very important for the voters to know. I mean, at the end of the day, if the property owners that would be most affected and benefit from it don't want it, we ought to ask why we're bringing it forward.
And, it does fall on the committee because, we haven't reached out that much,
You've done
as
the
far as we
technical
should
part,
have.
you've done the technical part of what does the sewer look like. Now you're getting to the business terms of who's gonna pay for this and how much can you put up to have the town continue with the project.
I'm seeing 3 May, 2 November. Do we want to formalize vote?
If you're ready, I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion. These aren't numbered, so I'm just gonna, they theoretically should be 17 and 18, since we went through 16 other articles. I'll make a motion to withhold the articles 17 and 18 for the May 2015 annual town meeting. 14, I'm sorry, fiscal year.
Unless you're going to put it up another year. You're not going to
Fiscal
put it
year
up another
15.
year.
I'm a selectman, I'm putting it, that's what I don't know.
Fiscal year 15.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded to table the two borrowing articles, to not include them on the warrant. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
All right. So we have our articles.
So they got the remaining 15 articles to insert, because you bumped the supermajority.
Yes.
So you want to vote to insert those. Have a,
All right, so I'll make a motion to insert articles.
Sidebar?
No, I was going to just mention to you, we had 9:15 for a three-board joint committee meeting.
Yeah.
Suggest we postpone it?
3 boards here.
We'll get back to you with dates and time.
Sure.
I'd rather come
You
back
guys-
fresh at 7 o'clock for an hour, some other night of the week.
Yeah.
but I'm sure you're glad you didn't miss this.
Delighted.
What we just,
So with your permission there, that's what we'll do.
With you withdrawing?
Sure.
On the motion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about the
All
way.
right, do we have a date and time, or are you gonna work that out?
We'll float some dates, yeah, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
Fred's time was well spent, though, because he's been paying rapt attention for the last hour.
Sorry.
How you doing, Steve?
Good.
Okay. All right, number 8, 9 o'clock. Town administrator, you wanna get these staffing vacancy
Three
reviews?
staffing vacancy reviews, police dispatcher.
You want to vote to insert the articles? first?
Oh, yeah, oops, sorry.
All right, there you go. Hey, you should be chair, Jim.
Looking for the, what article was the voter participation?
It was,
14.
yeah, 14, yeah.
Thanks. All right, make a motion. Make a motion, move the board of selectmen vote to insert the following articles on the warrant for the November 4th, 2013 special town meeting, subject to the approval of town council. Article 1, bill the prior year. 2, fund collective bargaining agreement. 3, Article 3, fiscal year 2014, budget amendments. Article 4, fiscal 2014 capital items from available funds. Article 5, Littleton 300. Article 6, establish Park and Recreation Community Education Enterprise Fund. Article 7, other post-employment benefit liability trust fund. Article 8, Community Preservation Act agreement. Article 9, revenue sharing, solar, peak generator, town landfill, cell towers and water requested by boards of electric and water commissioners. Article 10, Russell Street sidewalk easement. Article 11, Russell Street aerial utility line and pole easement. Article 12, transfer of land and conservation requested by cemetery commissioners. Article 13, zoning bylaw amendment, motor vehicle, vehicular retail sales requested by planning board. Excellent. And Article 14, bylaw amendment, manner of authorizing indebtedness. And Article 15, fee schedules.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, so move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, subsection 5, to refer back to the planning board for hearing proposed zoning amendment on motor vehicle vehicular retail sales.
All those in favor signify by saying, wait,
Yep.
aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Do we want to have a motion or just a request of Keith to request a feedback from the voter participation committee to?
Great.
Do you
Take
want
the
a motion or
motion, yeah,
just?
take a motion, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Move that we,
I'll make a motion to request the town administrator to get feedback from the voter participation committee on the existing warrant as proposed by the Board of Selectmen on September 16th, 2013.
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Let's see.
Okay, we've got 3 sets of staffing vacancy reviews, one for police dispatch, another for highway, and the third for finance, and we start with the
Only because he got up here first.
That-
Do we need a long discussion on these, or do these both meet the policy and the procedures that we've established?
All three of them.
All three of them do. They're not an addition to staff. They're at the existing set of hours, and they're due to incumbents that have resigned.
No additional costs, no additional benefits.
All within the operating budget as appropriated for.
You didn't save money.
And they're all needed to maintain the essential services that they're offering. We can't
Does-
do without the dispatcher, we can't do without the highway help
And
as we
Steve's gonna
approach the
leave when we
season.
don't fill the payroll person.
And we can't, yeah, definitely Bonnie can't do without that.
Doesn't need a trigger vote on it.
Hearing that, does the board want to vote, does the board want to discuss these?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to grant the police chief's request under the staffing vacancy review policy to fill one full-time benefited dispatch communications officer position.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to amend its vote of April 8th of 2013 and approve, what are we amending?
The original vote, you authorized filling a position by promotion. And
So, okay, so this
And
is.
we're not doing, and we didn't do that, we hired a summer laborer, and so we want to hire a winter laborer, but we also want to fill,
That
we also
vacancy.
want to fill that other vacancy that we had. Instead of by promotion, we want to fill it with a
So
laborer.
this is the result of Mr. Goddard leaving?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
he got promoted, and this is the vacancy after that. Perfect.
Yeah, we haven't promoted
We haven't
anybody.
promoted anybody until we get the,
Yeah, we're doing a highway staffing
Okay.
consultant review before we bring any promotions
Okay.
forward.
So this
We
vacancy is
need,
based on.
we need the workers.
current staff
Yeah.
level.
Okay.
No addition to staff.
Yeah.
Move that the Board of Select vote to amend its vote on April 8, 2013, and approve the highway operations manager request under the staffing vacancy review policy to fill one permanent full-time truck driver, equipment operator, and one temporary seasonal winter truck driver, equipment operator.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
We need real discussion about this last one.
Oh my
Lastly,
God.
All right, move that the Board of Selectmen vote to grant the Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budgets request under the staffing vacancy review policy to fill a part-time 28-hour per week benefited position, payroll and finance coordinator, grade 7. Sir?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Procurement.
procurements.
We got one, two procurements.
First one is to purchase off the state bid list for road salt for highway.
Best price?
Yes.
Same price as last
Maybe
year.
it was last year and then the lowest price.
Excellent. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize execution of a memorandum of understanding to purchase off of the VEH 91 state road salt contract for the 2013-2014 winter season at the cost of $50.57 per ton.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You got your salt.
Salt
We
is-
got our salts.
All right. What's the, you want to go real quick on this, Jim, on the contract? I mean, it's, oh, this is the one we already discussed. This is the one we discussed, yeah. We just formalized, okay.
Okay.
Solid waste hauling contract.
Mhm.
All right, yeah. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to award a one-year contract to Low Bidder Waste Management, Inc. of Woburn, Massachusetts for hauling, trucking of solid waste, bulky items, construction and demolition waste, plastic and tin cans from the Littleton Transfer Station for round-trip pricing as follows. To Cavanta, Cavanta payroll, $181.50. To the Devon's facility, $82. To the Garden facility, $82.
Wait, this isn't the one we discussed before.
That is.
I thought the other one was multi-year.
Oh, no,
Contract.
you were talking the actual
Oh.
solid waste. This
Right.
is the hauling.
This is
of
different
solid
one.
This is just a
All
hauling
right,
one.
so just give me a quick, Bonnie, if you would.
This actually was competitively bid. We did seal bids. We had, I think, 10 applicants take out packages. 5 of them came back with Waste Management submitting the low bid. They've been the low bidder for the last, I don't know, 5-6 years. So, and Jimmy is pleased with their service and provider services. But it's hauling the solid waste.
And it was based on the annual estimate because I see all the prices are higher, lower than other depending on where they were going, so it's just on the
Give an
annual.
estimate of the amount of loads based on last year,
Yeah.
and we put that in, so it's basically based on loads, if the loads are higher or lower.
Yeah, it could change, okay. All right,
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No executive session, is that what I'm hearing?
Yep, Selectmen's schedule.
Yeah, the only one, I don't have an issue, and it looks like there's no real option, is November 18th is Patriots Monday Night Football. But
Yeah, It's the date we had agreed for Bonnie's sake that we would schedule the tax
I
rate.
know.
So,
Yeah.
Well, it's-
maybe move it as a Tuesday.
Yeah, what's the 19th? That's what we
You
typically
could-
do
you could-
sometimes.
You could,
Let's go to the
yeah,
19th.
sure.
Okay.
Let's do that, Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday the 19th.
No, the tax rate hearing is,
That's a great suggestion, Tuesday, November 19th. Yes.
Perfect.
Yep, perfect. Solves all the problems.
Solves all the problems of the world, right there, folks.
Well, it does.
Yes, it
you know.
does.
Yes.
have never seen that before.
let's see what?
Never
I
seen the
have-
selectmen vote to
We
change it?
Move a date for.
Yeah, we,
Monday
Night
hey,
Football.
welcome to Littleton. So we've been doing this for years.
Yeah, come
It's all
on.
good.
Town meetings get moved.
And it only took.
Business is the town.
See, at least we admit it. You know what, but a lot of towns do it, we don't want to
Yeah.
admit it.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to schedule the following Board of Selectmen
You're right,
meetings
Beth.
for the dates indicated at 7 PM in room 103 Shattuck Street Building, Monday, October 7th and 21st, 2013, regular meetings, Monday, November 4th, 2013, special meeting at 6:30 PM prior to town meeting, Tuesday, November 19th, 2013, regular meeting, Monday, December 2nd, and Monday, December 16th, 2013, regular meetings.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
But our next
Right.
meeting is September 30th, so
So be there.
2 weeks from tonight. Yep.
We'll be there.
All right, so the
Two
minutes
cents.
Okay.
for July 22nd, any issues for July 22nd?
I just have one tiny thing, Jen, on the, it's the very last vote, there are only 4 of us here, so it was a 4-0 vote. And thank you for including the time that we finished, because tonight, it's gonna be a good one.
All right, I move that the board approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes for Monday, July 22nd, 2013.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, for August 19th, 2013, any issues?
None that I read.
Nope.
All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the minutes from its meeting on Monday, August 19th, 2013.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey,
That's a record, right? Is that your latest
what?
ever?
Downtown.
Library trustee meeting once, one time, recorded past.
I don't know that we have.